How did shy guys finally meet the love of their life? I was sitting in second day of bio class in college. The class had like 100 or more students in it. I liked to get there early to reserve my seat. Was a very shy guy, and my row was always empty except for me, which I didn't mind at all. Anyway, I was sitting there and I looked over at the far door to watch the students pile in. A girl, obviously on the tennis team, walks in. 10 out of 10. I look at her, she looks at me, and I look away because I didn't want to be awkward. Next thing I know, she's right next to me and asks if the seat next to me is taken. It isn't. She sits down and I don't know what to do, but I have to do something. I look over and say, "I'm Ben, what's your name?" and put my hand out. I immediately regret the decision because maybe a handshake is too formal. She awkwardly shakes it and gives me her name. I ask how long she's been playing tennis. She doesn't. She's on the golf team, not the tennis team. I feel like an idiot, but I keep trying. She asks a couple of questions about me. I just got back from living in France for a couple of years. I'm half French, and I tell her as such. She's impressed and asks me to say a couple of things in French. More impressed. Class starts. She mentions how she'll need a study buddy to get through this. I catch on. I tell her we should make a study group. She's all for it. I get her number to set the group up. Class ends, and we go our separate ways. Next day of bio, I get to class a little later than usual. Walk in, and she's in her old spot. She saved my spot. I'm on cloud 9 and never miss a day of bio. We start studying together for exams. Then we start studying together every day. I have a car. I take her out to eat every now and then. She invites me hiking a month later. Just me and her. We go up the mountain to a spot that overlooks the city. She plays my favorite song by Blues Traveler. That's when I fall in love with her. Ask her out on the hike down. She says yes. First kiss. 2 years later and we're still together. My one apparently hit on me a lot, and eventually got mad and was like, "Do you just not like me or what?" I eventually stammered out an apology and asked her to hang out for Christmas. We've tolerated each other for 6 years this Christmas. Well, my last girlfriend was a friend that I had a crush on. We were playing the dot game, which is where you try to tap the other person's nose and say dot. It leads to a lot of wrestling if you're playing on a couch. I had her pinned down and we were both laughing. And then I just kissed her. Lucky for me, she was thinking, just kiss me already, or else that would have been real bad. I mean, if you're at the dot game stage, kissing is almost guaranteed. Actually, yeah, the narrator didn't know how to feel about this one, as the old just go for it kissing technique can be legitimately problematic. But then again, as that last commenter said, if they've consented to or initiated a game where you're wrestling on the couch, your odds are pretty damn good to begin with. Read the signs, guys. I'd say my boyfriend is more introverted than shy. He and my brother worked together, and my brother asked him to help move a big piece of furniture. He stayed for dinner, we talked, and then I asked him out. He's held on to me tight ever since. Basically, he did some favor and got dinner and a girlfriend out of it. Basically, you did all the work and he's lucky. After drinking 2 bottles of wine, I was talked, against my better judgment, into going to an event at a club with 2 friends. There, I met a beautiful and smiley girl who one of them knew from elsewhere. During the sobering up period, I remembered I dislike people and clubs, so I retreated to the 24-hour cafe and lounge place across the street and just drank tea, where friends and accompanying beautiful smiley girl eventually joined me. She and I talked, and it was great. She wasn't difficult to talk to like everyone else. When we all went our separate ways, we hugged and agreed we should definitely see each other again. After that, we spoke on Facebook, but didn't see each other again for like 3 or 4 months until she said she was coincidentally coming to meet friends near where I live, and that this would be a good opportunity to meet up. I later learned these friends were a ruse. We met at a pub and talked for ages about a lot of our favorite things. I asked if she wanted to come stay at my house, and we've been together for the 2 years since. We live together, and she's asleep next to me right now, and is by far the best thing to ever happen to me. I've never been with anyone before her, and was beginning to give up hope. When I was 19, one of my extrovert friends hooked me up with another introvert I would have never met otherwise. We started off exchanging emails. We lived 200 miles apart. This was in 2005, before smartphones with video chat, and before video chat was really even a thing. I had no idea what she even looked like. Our 8th anniversary is Monday, and we're taking the kids to dinner and a movie to celebrate. Did you find out how she looks like? Oh, I'm still too shy to look. She made the first move. The Sicilian defense, an excellent choice. I asked her out over MySpace. Frickin' MySpace. She inexplicably said yes, and we've been together since, well, MySpace was a thing. My current boyfriend is as shy as they come. He won me over by approaching me at a college mixer and just smiling and nodding while I blabbered on and on about the James A. Garfield assassination. Sometimes listening is all you need. I'm the same way with my current girlfriend. She'd never experienced something like that, so when we first started talking, every once in a while she'd throw in some completely off-topic nonsense. I'd ask her what the hell she was talking about, and she'd say something like, "Holy crap, you actually were listening." A little tipple of alcohol helps me become a bit more social, so that helps. I didn't get her, she got me. She went up to me and said, "You're my boyfriend now." And since I'm too shy to say yes or no, I went with it. We've been dating for 6 years now. Ah, kindergarten. I just want you all to know I'm standing here with a notepad for hints on how to finally get a girlfriend. I went through a 2-year period where I became pretty normal. I met her and got married during that time. I was sociable for some reason that I don't understand now. After we got married, I kind of went back to being my old hermit self. This answer is probably not much help. I just broke up with my girlfriend of 6 years. We met because I was making a conscious effort to be social after graduating high school. Unfortunately, I too reverted back to being antisocial and now I'm single again. You're a lucky man that she's stuck with you. I played the long con. Knew her for like 7 years, visited her on a job interview in late November, moved up to her like 2 weeks later, and married in March. That was 2.5 years ago, and now we have a 6-week-old daughter. It's been a busy few years. I'm awkward as heck, and I just told dumb jokes to make her laugh. I was always there for her, and we went out on a date up to a lake and just talked most of the night. We've been dating ever since, so my advice is just be yourself. She made me so much more confident in myself, and the past 1.5 years has flown by. She called me to wish me well for my birthday and asked if we could hang out to talk. She confessed she's been in love with me for the better part of a year. It's been 3 months since then. I felt the connection instantly. It almost scared me. I couldn't believe good chemistry could be this good. So yeah, I guess I hit a jackpot, is the answer. I wear a fake cast and trick them into helping me load stuff into my van. My only piece of dating advice is to order steak. Always have an extra piece cut and ready to go. Any awkward questions come up, you pop that in your mouth. Gives you a little time to think about your answers. For me, the trick was to be cool with being alone. I found my happiness, worked on improving myself, and eventually women started noticing me. There is definitely something to the whole confidence is attractive thing. I guess my advice is live your life and don't obsess about being single. Also, going to the gym helps because the better you think you look, the more confidence you project. Yep, narrator chiming in here. I've had massive dry spells in my life where I was just not doing all that great or feeling very good about myself, often trying real hard to meet someone during those times as well. But my best partners have all kind of dropped out of nowhere when I was already doing well, pretty happy and thriving. We just give off a better vibe when we're doing well. Focus on making your life better, sans partner, and whether or not you find one, you will be better off anyway. Oh man, it was my first day in math class. I saw this really pretty, curly-haired girl. She caught my eye and I sat close to her. The teacher ended up being horrible. It was a student teacher. So this girl would ask for help to explain stuff, and I would too after following her lead. Eventually, a group of us were confused enough to where we made a study group, and I still remember how happy I was when I got her number to make plans to study and look over the stuff the teacher didn't explain good enough. I ended up transferring out of that class because the teacher really was just that bad, but we stayed in touch. One night, she had a horrible pain, and her roommates had plans elsewhere, so I took her to the hospital instead of studying, and we bonded on a whole other level. It was like I'd known her for years, like she was instantly my new best friend, and then we just sort of fell for each other after all of the inside jokes and daily help we'd give each other. I know I got really lucky, but it made up for years of bad luck, believe me. I'm a guitar player. They just walk up to me and start talking. That's why I play guitar. That's why we all play, right? He just stared at me a lot, and then I made the first move. That doesn't work for everyone. Believe me, often it has the opposite effect. Somehow managed to convince myself to message her, "Hey, do you want to help me take down our hometown's roving scooter gangs?" And now I'm engaged. It's easy. Just answer thousands of personal ads, and eventually you'll get lucky. So there are single Asian women near me. I had a few beers at 1 a.m., went on datehookup.com, clicked on a profile that didn't even have a pic, and messaged her. 5 years together this year, 4 years married, with a 2-year-old daughter. Went from not having a car or job and riding the bus when we were dating, to affording 2 newer cars, and both of us have decent jobs now. Sometimes you just get lucky. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Oh, it wasn't easy. We used to work together, and for 3 months I was asking people at work if this girl I was interested in was single. I asked a whole bunch and never got an answer. Asked my best friend who also worked there at the time, and they told me they didn't know. Took me another month to ask this girl. My friend kept asking if I'd asked her out yet. I had it all planned out. I had a vacation coming up. She worked the Monday night. I went up right before close and bought some crap that I really didn't need, but used it as an excuse. I stayed after and talked to my friend who helped me out. After a while, I started kind of making conversation, acting like I was looking at the schedule, even though it didn't matter to me since I wasn't working. I felt the lump in my throat growing and growing. I knew that if I didn't ask, I probably never would. I felt like my nervousness was showing, and she was probably wondering what this weirdo was doing just creeping around her. I finally got the stones to straight up ask her if she wanted to go for dinner. She looked kind of freaked out, and I immediately started to panic. Then she said with a smile, yes. I couldn't believe it, but instead of keeping it inside, I said, really? I still hate myself for that, but I never let her live down her answer. Yeah, why not? She didn't realize it at the time, but that night is quite possibly what saved me. That was 2 years ago, and we just got married this past May. I don't regret a single moment of it. Bonus, my friend didn't know that I'd asked her out that night, and they didn't know why at the time, but I gave them a loud high five on the way out. I told them both about it a month afterwards. Tinder. We got coffee, walked around Goodwill, and made out in the back of her car on the first date. Couple of weeks later, and we're in love. It's been 2 years now, no regrets. I formally told her that she was my girlfriend now and that she could start sending me undressed pics if milady felt like it. I haven't heard back from her, so I'm assuming that's a yes? I didn't, I haven't, and most likely I won't. College. This hot redhead walks into the house that I'm sharing with 4 friends. They're all over her trying to chat her up. I ignore her. Later that night, we all get drunk. She passes out in my bed, and when I go to make sure she's okay, she asks me to stay there with her. We had some hot adult fun times and played the V-word game, where you rename the movie or video game or book titles to be lady parts themed, like Harry Potter and the Deathly Vajayjays, or Lawrence of Laby. Oh, you get the picture. We stayed up all night laughing, and the next morning I took her for coffee and donuts. Then, 2 years later, we got married. Yeah, I'm still single and waiting. Tinder of all places. I mean, look, I know it has the stereotype, but I firmly believe that you'll find what you're looking for on these apps. I was on it on college, and there was definitely ample opportunity for hookups. Last year, I downloaded it again and started meeting a lot of really interesting people. One girl was going for her PhD at Caltech, another was working for a non-profit that helps cancer survivors. One girl was in town for the weekend and was looking for a weekend date, and I couldn't say no. My point is that if you're looking for a relationship, you'll find it. And if you're looking for hookups, you'll find them too. Well, Wart was all like, I'm going to rule subcon, and then Princess Peach comes along and I says to her, oh wait, shy guys, not shy guys. I was a 22-year-old kissless virgin. I self-published a zine in the mid to late 90s. I put an article in there about how I was lonely, looking for companionship. Some zine friends recommended me to one of their real-life friends. We were married within 3 years, and it lasted for almost 15 years. She's great, and the end was nobody's fault. We were just on different paths. You know, every now and again, the narrator begins to worry that he's too terminally online. Then he gets a comment like this and has to actually search what the frick a zine is, and is reminded that aside from the work he does on his voiceover stuff, he's actually pretty clueless about the internet at large. I'm glad that you and your arty bookie magazine co-author managed to find happiness for that long. And no, I'm still not entirely sure what a zine is. When I was in high school, I was extremely shy. When I moved to a new town, I saw a girl in my homeroom who was very cute and interesting looking. I had a thing for alt girls at the time, and still do, and she had purple hair and was super artsy. I basically stalked her by finding her live journal and reading every post she made. I learned a ton about her this way, as creepy as it sounds. I learned that she really liked books, so I started bringing in weird books on philosophy that I left out in plain view. She started asking me about the books, and I would casually show interest in things that I knew she was super into. Obviously, we really hit it off and would talk on AIM every day. She eventually confessed that she had a crush on me, so I reciprocated, and we dated for around 4 months. First girl I did the deed with, but that's another ridiculous story. Now, many years later, I met my wife at the gym by pretending to need fitness advice. So my answer is still the same. Deception. Well, I don't know about you other guys, but I'm just pretty. Well, I didn't meet a girl this way. I got a boyfriend. There's a lot of guys in MMOs. I don't know if we're quite boyfriend or girlfriend yet, as we've only had one date, but she's a friend of a friend and we met at a gathering. I really hope we become a thing because she's pretty awesome. She's a cat lady. I told her I've been bitten by a tiger. All downhill from there. Marrying her this Friday. I handed her a note so it could do all the talking for me when I tried to ask her out, and thus began our long and awkward relationship. She's great, most of the time. Please send help. I asked her out to a movie, and later she told me she agreed to because it was so pathetic it was kind of cute. Me and a buddy were in high school, PE, bullcrapping around, when suddenly he goes, "Follow me." Then runs up to this girl and smacks her on the butt and runs for it. She looked at me in such surprise, shocked. I told her it wasn't me, but she didn't believe me, so the next couple of days we smacked each other in the halls. We started hanging out and then I asked her out. We dated for 2.5 years and broke up a year ago. Almost exactly a year, in fact. My technique is to be the more attractive wingman. I'm not straight, but I met my husband online where I'm less shy. He's a complete social butterfly, so he took over once we met in person. And now, we're married. Fake confidence. If you fake it long enough, it turns into actual confidence. Kinda wild. I was in a mutual meetup group at a happy hour at a local bar and restaurant. I noticed her shooting me glances more than twice throughout the night, but didn't act. She messaged me afterwards asking if I wanted to get to know her. I said sure and asked her out for a drink. And the rest is history. I met the love of my life by being shy. She took me home and rode me like the Wild West. She said she likes to take charge, but only in bed. I have not told her that I'm gay yet. What? That's gonna go down terribly. You better make a clean break out of there ASAP if there's no emotional connection. It was a joke, guys. I'm straight. Hey, I'm the girlfriend of the shy guy in question. Guy was max-level introverted. He was terrified and unsure and just going along with the flirts that I was sending his way. And that was the exact right thing to do. He put himself in a social situation, and I showed up to consume him. He had the social awareness to know when I was hitting on him, and just went along with it. I did most of the heavy lifting. Hey, you're cute. Let's talk for an hour about Warhammer 40k. We should talk more about Space Marines at another place. Okay, yes, I am touching your chest. But my dude was excellent in being aware of my hit-ons and responding to them, despite the fear that was very obviously there. I like taking control. I find it really, really flattering when a guy is scared of me. My guy was terrified, like virgin terrified, and all the anxiety and self-defeating thoughts and everything were attractive to me. I took all of that fear as a compliment and used it to drive my flirts until, whoops, it's 5 years later and he's met my grandparents. Everything flowed from that single point, and that point was accepting that this is happening, let's just go with it. Shy guys, your fear is adorable. Women will respond. Sometimes we're strong and we'll want to drag you off to play arcade games and teach us how to dominate as immortal Necron overlords. Learn, adapt, accept. Just go with it. I had to get our high school librarian to introduce us. By sheer coincidence, the librarian was friends with both of us, so it was easy. My desired girlfriend thought I was a geek. 30 years later, 22 married, she still thinks I'm a geek, especially with my new Star Trek Bluetooth communicator badge. Well, my wife scoped me out. She thought I was cute. Found my nerdy engineering student aura real hot, I guess. I drove her to her folks' place for Thanksgiving. They live 15 miles from my siblings, and we hit it off. Our official first date was going to a book signing for Words of Radiance by the incredible Brandon Sanderson. I paid her 2,000 pesos. One of my best friends was dating a girl who was rooming with a therapist-to-be. The therapist-to-be had previously roomed with a shy girl. The therapist-to-be psychoanalyzed both of us and said we'd be a good fit. Me and Shy Girl have been married 1.5 years. That therapist is real good. I summoned every ounce of charisma and blind courage in my crappy body and asked her out to dinner. It went well, dated for a year and a half. So I didn't get a girlfriend, so I can't say, but once in my Spanish class, I used to sit with one dude and two girls who I got along with. Every now and then, after class, all four of us would go get coffee before heading back home. So I guess I got on pretty well with one of the girls, because little by little she started being more touchy and closer, until one day she asked me, "When are you going to ask me out?" I would have asked her out right there on the spot, but I had too many unresolved issues with myself, and I basically just got cold feet and left. I kinda regret it every now and again. Fathers, what is the best way you have messed with a daughter's boyfriend when meeting him? I was the boyfriend. Her dad challenged me to a game of chess, and lost horribly. Afterwards, he took me to the man cave and proceeded to try to beat me at pool and video games. He lost terribly. I kind of felt bad afterwards, but at the time, it felt good. My then-girlfriend could only laugh at us being competitive and trying to beat each other in games. I'm still the ex-boyfriend he would rather her date, despite her and I not talking but once every 2 years. My sister's first real boyfriend was from about 3 hours away, and she brought him to the house for the first time without telling us they were coming. My father and I had no intention of messing with him. Due to some poor planning on my sister's part, they showed up on the Saturday before the start of the hunting season. At the time, my father and I were sighting in the hunting rifles up the field around 500 yards. Completely unintentional, but if I'd been in his shoes, I would have crapped myself. I'm a daughter, and I do not have any funny father stories, but I do have one badass mum story. My house has the front door on the second floor, and our front steps are large and can be intimidating. All friends are required to come inside and introduce themselves before I could get in their car and leave with them. So I had a date with a popular boy, douchebag, and he texted me that he was there to pick me up and to come outside. I told him that he has to come and meet my parents, and he did, although awkwardly and rudely. Long story short, he was incredibly disrespectful towards me, and I was back home within 30 minutes. Later that evening, my mother messaged him on Facebook, "You are the rudest boy to ever walk up the steps to my house." Shortly after, I got a large apology text from the boy. My mother didn't tell me about the message she sent until at least 6 months later. It was awesome. Oh, well done, Mum. Dads may be able to bring the threats, but this lady weaponized some good old-fashioned shame. I have one my dad did. I had the first boyfriend come over, I was 14, for Halloween, and my dad, a butcher, was unwrapping bones for our 3 dogs as a treat. My boyfriend walked over to my dad, who was using a knife, a great big one, to cut the shrink wrap off them, and asked what those bones were from. My dad, looking boyfriend dead in the eye, pulled a sharpening steel out of the bucket on the counter and sharpened the blade on the already sharp knife in swift movements, and said, "My daughter's old boyfriend." Boyfriend went sheet white and dumped me the next day. Thanks, Dad. Not a father, but my cousin has the best story about a first and last date. In the late 70s, my uncle was living a post-divorce bachelor life and was enjoying himself immensely, dating a younger woman who from a distance or behind resembled my cousin enough that they could be mistaken for one another, and if standing near each other, you might assume they were sisters. While he was dating this woman, my cousin, all of 16 at the time, was going on her first real date dinner. A school dance, the works. My uncle was slightly apprehensive about it, but was determined to make the best of the situation and accept the fact that his little girl was growing up. A few minutes before she had to be picked up, my uncle was struck by inspiration. He and his girlfriend were also going out to dinner that night, and he noticed that his daughter and his girlfriend were wearing the identical sweaters. So he sprung into action. He made his girlfriend give her necklace to his daughter, had them swap shoes, and put paper bags over their heads. When my cousin's date walked up, he was warmly greeted by Uncle, who ushered him into the living room and said, "We're all going out tonight. You pick your date, and I'll take the other." The kid, speechless, stammered for a bit, and then pointed. My cousin went out on a very fancy dinner date with her father to a French bistro, despite being terribly mortified. She admits that the food was exceptional, and her father let her have a few glasses of wine to ease the mortification. After dinner, he dropped her off at the dance and picked up his girlfriend. Let's just say, neither woman was happy, and my cousin's paramour, so confused by the situation, decided it was time to end their relationship. I aspire to achieve such heights of mind-messery. I feel like that could have been kind of funny if it ended with the choice. Like, ha ha ha, all in good fun, kid. Here, take the daughter out. Thanks for being a good sport. But to actually make him go through with taking out the other girl? The frick, man? I was the daughter. Boyfriend and I were sitting in my kitchen when Dad came home from playing volleyball. After talking a few minutes, without any warning, Dad dropped his pants. Thankfully, he had gym shorts on underneath. I told this story at Dad's funeral, and it got a lot of laughs. Was the boyfriend. Wanted to take girlfriend on a date, but she said her dad had to meet me first. He was a single dad, so it's not like her mum would have been there to hold him back or anything, and dude was pretty buff. My girlfriend goes in her room while her dad sits me down on the couch and sits across from me, not saying a word, but looking straight into my eyes the whole time. 15-year-old me was pretty shaken. He finally says, "I'm gonna make this short. Anything you do to my daughter, I'm going to do to you." We just held hands that day. That's when you reply, "You're gonna finger my butt?" I'm Korean. I play StarCraft. He's going to have to beat me on the Hunter's map to get permission for the first date. Yes, old school Brood War StarCraft. I fully respect this method of proving oneself to a prospective father-in-law. After all, it's potentially the scenario I'm most likely to succeed in. Boyfriend of a girl with 2 dads. I've yet to meet her real father, and she doesn't want me to. He's a huge crapbag that cheated on her mum and then fled across the country. Her stepdad I see on a somewhat regular basis. He's a character, and that's for sure. We told our parents about our relationship about 2 to 3 weeks ago, and the first thing he does is shake my hand with a grip that's way too hard for normal, and then takes me aside and asks what my intention is with his daughter. While asking this, he's gripping his hand around my neck. It should be noted, I'm a big kid. I'm 6'1" and like 200 pounds. I'm not easily intimidated. At that moment, this man scared the crap out of me. As I was trying to muster up an answer, he drops his hand and hugs me and tells me he's messing with me and that I should have seen my face. Needless to say, she doesn't like him much either. Boyfriend of a girl with 2 dads. At first I thought this meant she has same-sex parents, which meant you had to put up with twice as many dad jokes. I'm the boyfriend in this situation. Was at my girlfriend's house, her dad saw me, walked up to me and said, "Who the frick are you?" and then proceeded to follow me around, practically touching my face with his until I left. Fortunately, he was electronically tagged and couldn't follow me out of the house. Just FYI, he was tagged for sticking up for kids being beaten up by other men. So I want to give a bit more context to this. I went to my girlfriend's house to pick her up. She wasn't ready, so I went outside. While we were on our way out, he made his comment and then followed me out of the house, obviously looking me up and down while remaining uncomfortably close. This possibly lasted about 20 seconds. This wasn't an aggressive thing, he did it purely to make me feel awkward and on the spot. I think he wanted to see what type of guy I was, how I would react to that sort of confrontation, etc. According to my girlfriend, her ex-boyfriends resembled mouthy kids. Perhaps her dad was testing my level of maturity. I can't say for sure, never asked him about it. Hope this explains things a little better. When I brought my first real boyfriend home for dinner for the first time, I forgot to mention that my dad was also home for dinner. He's a policeman and comes home for meals, so we rock up and there's a police car in the driveway. It's normal for me, but my boyfriend's face was literally, "Ooh, uh-oh." My dad always calls my boyfriends what's-his-face until he gains respect for the guy. My current boyfriend just recently got his name privilege, which has happened, I think, twice. I made up a game. I call them by a different name every time I address them. Goal is to see how many times I can call them before they correct me. Record is 27 in one visit. My pawpaw greeted my aunt's boyfriend with a single gunshot out the front door, into the old gutted truck about 20 yards away from the main driveway. He still fires off a greeting shot when they come in and out from town 17 years later. To expand, a pawpaw is a grandfather if your country is F. My pawpaw is half Japanese, half Native American former US Marine, sheriff and EMT, current Etsy scarf and shawl shop owner. I'm trying to decide if that sounds more West Virginia or Alabama. Louisiana, and don't you forget it. My daughter just turned 8. I am here for notes. Opens notepad. Begin. Welcome, new dad. Well, the rule seems to be threaten or imply violence, and if you own a weapon of some kind, so much the better. Narrator and the I Am the Genius channel does not condone this method. My daughters are 2 and 4. When my oldest was born, I started working out again. I found the best inspiration on days when I'm feeling lazy is to imagine myself as some nearly mythical titan ripping the door off its hinges to greet some poor kid intent on taking my daughter on a date. So my plan is long-term, and I'll check back and let you all know how it goes. My dad has told every single one of the guys I've brought home, even if they were just friends, that he's not afraid to go back to jail. My dad has never been to jail. My dad is very good at deadpanning. Upon meeting my boyfriend, Dad told him that he was too tall. He's almost 7 foot. He wasn't sure if my dad was messing with him or was actually serious. I had to explain to him later that a good portion of what my dad says should be taken with a grain of salt. I was the boyfriend in this case, but this one has always stuck with me. Everyone knows the old "dad is cleaning his gun" cliché. Well, this is a slightly different version of that. He was polishing a sledgehammer. It turned out he was actively just screwing with me and didn't care. But I had to give him credit for creativity and for leaving me at an absolute loss when I walked into their living room and saw the gleam from the shiny hammer. Not a father, but if I have a daughter, I want to dress like a clown and say, "Well, I'm off to work." These are the ones I like. It's funny, but at the same time, you're not threatening a kid. 10 out of 10. We hosted a beautiful teenage exchange student for a year. When a boy came to take her to a dance, I looked down at him and said, in roughly these words, "I am responsible for her right now, but her real father is even bigger than me, and you don't want to do anything that would tee off both of us." I went to tell my new father-in-law that I was serious with his daughter and intended to marry her. He interpreted it as me asking for his permission and told me, "Now isn't the right time. Maybe in a few years." That really messed me up. Good guy, language barrier. It all worked out in the end. Daughter here. First time I bring my boyfriend to my hometown, we visit my parents. My mum tries to stuff him with food while my dad excitedly describes the great deal he got on my sister's new car. My boyfriend comes to join me in the middle of this and my dad stops, looks him dead in the eye and excitedly says, "Want to see something cool?" We are greeted with a picture of my dad when he was 21, buff, shirtless, and flexing. I begin to cover my face in embarrassment as my dad looks excitedly at my boyfriend for a response. My boyfriend simply says, "You look good, man." Pretty sure my dad did this to embarrass me instead of mess with my boyfriend, but did put him in a pickle for a second there. My boyfriend now makes jokes about how hot my dad is, just to embarrass me more. I call this the worst first date experience thanks to my dad. I moved to a new school in the 3rd grade and fell in elementary love with a boy wearing those pants that unzip to reveal shorter pants, or shorts. It was not until the 5th grade, after endless diary entries and tampered with MASH outcomes, that my crush finally asked me out on a date. My dad immediately said no and I sobbed. I sobbed and sobbed until my mother talked my dad into letting me go. The only problem was, he was coming too. I decided not to tell my crush that my father would be attending the date with us, but instead pretended to be just as confused as he was that an older man was sitting directly behind us during the movie. The movie was Just Married. My poor crush tried to put his arm around me, and I felt my face flush as a voice from behind us said, "You want to keep that arm?" My father laughs to this day about how far we were leaning away from each other after that, and is very pleased with himself that he ended my affectionate advances. What my dad doesn't know is that we kissed every recess after that date until our terribly dramatic breakup on the soccer field. One thing I will say seriously for a second here is that if you try and forbid your kid from interacting with the opposite gender, they will generally find a way. These kids are thankfully a little young to get into real trouble, but I genuinely feel like rebellious teens will go further than they might have gone otherwise just to get back at their overbearing parents. Boyfriend, now husband. I came over to meet her extended family for Thanksgiving, sat down next to her uncle. He looks over at me and says, "I'm gay, you know," and stares at me. I replied with, "Me too," and moved closer to him, practically sat on his lap. I like this guy. Been married to her for 2 years and been together for 8 years now. Her family is hilarious. My wife's aunt is very outgoing, playful, and loves to party and drink, and mess with the boyfriends. The first time I met her, she was already drunk and got very handsy with me. She'd put her arm around my shoulder and pull me in tight, kiss my cheek, push my face towards her cleavage, etc. She was trying to make me squirm. She says, "I got a hot tub out back. Why don't you and I go for a dip?" And I, uncharacteristically, shot back with, "Well, I didn't bring my swimsuit. Would you mind if we just hop in naked, just the two of us?" She busted up laughing and ever since always jokingly refers to me as her boyfriend and tells my wife to back off of me, that I'm hers, etc. I was told I passed the test that evening. It was like being jumped into a gang, but instead I was molested by the drunk and crazy aunt of the family. They're a fun family as well. I was the boyfriend. My girlfriend warned me that her dad liked to be sitting in his chair, cleaning his shotgun, whenever one of the girls brought a boy to meet the parents. She told me that the gun was a relic and had been disabled or deactivated or some damn thing. Don't remember the exact term. She said he was real proud of it and said it was a Springfield something or other. So I walked in and there he was. I said, "Hey, nice Springfield something or other," and asked if I could hold it. He handed it to me, and I looked at it and said, "When did you have it deactivated?" The girls, who were all watching, smiled. He wasn't amused, especially after he started a discussion about guns, and it was clear I didn't know anything about them. He eventually figured out that she warned me, and he was none too pleased at how bold I was. I just thought it was funny. That was the start of a long and rocky relationship with that man. Much to his dismay, I married his daughter. Now that I'm the dad, I grill the boyfriends about what my daughter has told them about me and her mother. My being a forensic investigator is not something my daughters usually lead with, I have found. And my comments about knowing how to make it look accidental are usually met with some level of clenching. Brother to the sister that brought him home. My old man wrote his name on a 12-gauge shell and set it on the mantel above the fireplace and said nothing. It was about halfway through dinner before he noticed it. I've never seen a face get so white so quick in all my life. They're married now. Shell is still sitting there. Was the boyfriend. Walked into the cleaning the guns gag. He asked, "What are your intentions with my daughter?" And without missing a beat, because sometimes I lack a filter, I replied, "Depends. What do you think I can get away with?" Her mother laughed so hard she dropped a glass and broke it. Mine was, "That depends how she feels about rubber chickens and tapioca." This wasn't my dad, but my brother. I brought my boyfriend home for a week over the summer. We're in college and live in separate states, we're not at school. And I was very excited for him to meet my family. I had already met his, and they were pretty cool. My parents were very nice and normal to him, but when we sat down for dinner that night, my brother, who was 2 years younger than me, came downstairs, chatted normally for a bit, then said, "Wait here." He runs up to his room and comes back down about 5 minutes later with a stack of papers and a pen and sets it down in front of my boyfriend. "It's a quiz." It was a quiz. A literal quiz that he had typed out. He made him put his name and the date and everything. The questions were divided into 3 categories: sports, music, and movies. They were all things my brother considered vital for my boyfriend to know if he ever wanted to truly belong to the family. My boyfriend, being the cool guy that he is, took it all in stride and only got about 2 wrong on the whole 30 questions quiz, with no preparation or studying at all. My family was suitably impressed, and he's around a year and a half later. The following story just had too many little anecdotes about the father in question, so bear with me. Am the daughter. Dad and his best friends dressed up in Speedos, mowed the lawn, barbecued, held hands, sang horribly off-key together, and nicknamed the poor soul McBigMac. He stopped hanging out with me after that. Dad and his best friends still do weird stuff together like this, and they are my favorite people. Oh, Dad and his best friends are hilariously straight, but hey, you can't really be considered best friends if people don't think you're a little gay, right? I'm intrigued as to how you can be hilariously straight. You sleep with clowns of the opposite sex. What the F? Oh, where can I get a dad that funny? Well, he likes to show up at the mall in grass skirts, coconut bras, and a siren light on his head, but only when you have boys around. I'm willing to sell mine. The first post I thought, boy, he's silly. Now I'm thinking maybe he's not all there. The first time I met my ex's dad, he had just had surgery. I think I was 15 at the time, and while I was waiting for her, he asked me if I would go into the study and put on some music and make him a drink. I got him a single Jameson with 1 ice cube, because that's what my Irish family members drank, and I knew he was Hibernian, and put on a Fleetwood Mac record because he had an awesome player set up. That was him testing me, apparently. He told me later that I passed because I didn't just plug in my phone into their auxiliary cord and grab him a beer. I hung out with him once, way later after his daughter and I had broken up, and he ordered me a Jameson with a single ice cube on his way out of the bar. I was the boyfriend. I wanted to take my girlfriend out to see a movie, but she said that I had to meet her dad first. Her dad runs the local farmer's market, so I had to stop by that morning. Luckily, it was winding down because after an awkward hello, he put his hand on my shoulder and led me around and introduced me to everyone at all the stands. Now, for an introvert such as myself, this would have been bad enough. But no, as he was introducing me to everyone, he used random female names for me. "Hi there, so-and-so, this here's Stephanie, and he's taking my daughter on her first date. Hi guys, meet Martha, he's taking my daughter out." It was kind of funny afterwards. I had a boyfriend named Nelson. My dad took great pleasure in doing Nelson's laugh from The Simpsons whenever my boyfriend came over. We didn't last long, lol. Pretty sure you mean, we didn't last long. Ha ha! Beat 'em up in Battlefield and a few other video games. I'm almost 50 and have been a gamer since my early teens. I have more experience with games than he has. A mate was arrested for drug possession by his girlfriend's police officer father. He was going to be introduced to that family that weekend anyway. Would have loved to have been a fly on the wall that evening. Boyfriend. Hello, future father-in-law. First of all, I want to apologize for my twin brother. He is the black sheep of the family and in no way representative of my or my parents' values and culture.
What's the most legendary thing that happened at your school? My school was on a hill and the tallest building in the area. During Fleet Week, the Blue Angels flew what must have been 100 to 200 feet above it, shattered like 30 windows on the top floor of the school. I attended a high school called Rampart that, despite being a blue ribbon school, had serious budget issues. The budget problems got so bad that the principal started renting out the school gym to anyone willing to pay up to use it. Some guy rented the gym out for a Saturday night, saying he was going to hold a church dance. Instead, he held a rave that got so out of hand it destroyed the gym. The incident quickly grew into legend amongst the students. Many claimed to have been there or to have known the guy who threw the rave. We weren't able to use the gym for the rest of the year. They kept the doors locked, but there were constant attempts to force them open so we could see the damage. It didn't take long for the students to start referring to the school as Rave Part, and whenever we had to sing the national anthem, we would finish it in the home of the rave. The next year, we had a new principal too, but we never knew if the old principal was fired because of the rave incident. 2 teachers screwing in an empty class. They thought they had locked the door. A student caught them. They were both fired. We have a school news channel that sometimes did live segments about new stuff going on. This was every morning in homeroom. One morning, they were doing a walkthrough of the new part of the school just built. They walk into a staircase and some girl is sitting on some kid's face on the floor. This is at 8 a.m. and the entire school saw it. Some dude in English class sat next to the electrical outlet, so he decided to grab the kid next to him and stick a piece of metal into the outlet. Shocked the heck out of both of them. They were both fairly okay, but almost scared the teacher to death. Also, there was the time a girl screwed 2 dudes in the auditorium during a basketball game and it was caught in the school camera. Her family ended up sending her somewhere else after that. This happened at my school in the UK around 2002. We had an indoor swimming pool at my school that was always really cold, and one particularly freezing December day, a bunch of us decided that we really didn't fancy having to do swimming for PE, so we dared this kid called Todd, who was pretty crazy, to crap in the pool. He said he would do it for 10 pounds. We had a quick whip round and managed to get the money pretty quick between us. To avoid getting caught, he decided to crap into the pool from the roof through a skylight. A lot of the buildings in our school had staircases on the outside, so it didn't take much effort for a couple of us to give him a leg up onto the roof. Once he was up there, we ran back down to the pool and looked through the windows. Sure enough, after a couple of minutes, we saw 2 or 3 of Todd's crap apples drop into the perfectly still pool, causing a gentle, disgusting, but oddly beautiful ripple. There was no PE for us that day. There was a huge sexting scandal where a handful of girls' images were being sent around. Well, when the school caught wind of it, they did the only thing a school could do. They held an assembly. Girls in the auditorium and boys in the gym. After an hour or so of, "you shouldn't do that," they had the district attorney come in to talk about the legality of underage sexting. One of the seniors stood up and asked him if it was legal if they were over 18. He said yes, and the entire place went nuts. Everyone was cheering, clapping, and laughing. The principal walked over to the mic and said, "Who asked that?" The guy stood up again and triumphantly said, "Zen Master Steve!" The audience once again erupted into cheers as he got called into the principal's office. I watched a friend sneeze and hit their head off a desk so hard that they gave themselves a concussion. There's a tradition here in Australia that the year 12s, final year of high school, usually have a day called Muck Up Day, where they play pranks or whatever in the school. Well, one year, the year 12s decided to screw with the whole school and placed roadwork signs and cones on one of the main roads next to the school. They diverted all that traffic through the school, essentially screwing up a lot of people's days. It is the best thing anyone has done on Muck Up Day at our school. At the school where I used to teach, the students told me that years ago, someone swapped the science teacher's Bill Nye video with the hardcore adult tape. According to legend, the teacher didn't notice for quite a while, and the students watched several minutes of smut that day. I told my class that it was a stupid rumor, and I'm sure that never happened. When class was over, one of my students walked up and said, "Mister, it's true. My brother was the one who switched that tape." Went to a boarding school, so several screw tapes and photos got leaked. This was 2004 to 2006, so before iPhones and whatnot. This mainly happened due to a program called MyTunes, where you could share your iTunes and movie libraries on the network. so people would accidentally drop their videos and photos into the folder that was shared without realizing it, and people bored looking for new music or whatever would stumble upon it. Once the administration found out about a video and the student was 18, allegedly, he had to watch the video with the president of the school in his office in order to determine that it didn't happen on campus and that both participants were of age. Didn't get in trouble at all. I mean, glad that he didn't get in trouble, but could you imagine the awkwardness of having to sit in an office with a supervisor watching your own screw tape? I took an A+ course in high school. We had an alright sized lab room for stripping computers and another room full of computers for other worker lessons. There were a few stuffed animals in the lesson room as a half-hearted attempt by my teacher to decorate. Those come into play later. My teacher kept finding certain history on one of the computers. It was always horribly spelled or incoherent searches, and she assumed it was a freshman being smart to impress his friends during a different class. One day she gets fed up with it and makes a special project for us nerds in her A+ course. She gave us one of the lab computers and the smallest cam she could find and asked us to make a hidden camera. We complied and made a decent one and brought it into the other room, set it to record with more than enough hard drive space and aimed it at the perp's pewter. The next day we fire up the vid and see one of the seniors coming in before school starts, Googling some videos and giving himself the old wax job. He cleaned up with one of the stuffed animals and went about his business. She threw out the stuffed animals and the cops got involved. Kid got into trouble but went into the army after high school, so maybe it all worked out in the end. Sorry, the stuffed animal? It didn't do anything. Why that? Why Teddy? My junior year, the seniors put hay everywhere inside the freaking English building, where it basically looked like a farm. One of the admins wasn't even letting people look at the mess inside. Also, when I was in 2nd grade, my school was supposed to have a fire drill, so for some reason the alarm wasn't going off. The lunch ladies decided it would be a good idea to set something in the kitchen on fire to make the alarm go off. They burned a good majority of the lunch that was supposed to be served that day. My high school was a bit on the sketchy side. During my sophomore year, there was a fire, and despite all the fire drills we'd been doing since kindergarten, no one really knew what to do. Some students made their way 10 blocks away to a Wendy's and a Waldbaum's, where they proceeded to rob both. At the end of my junior year, this sophomore threw his freshman girlfriend through a display case. She ended up with 13 stitches and he got a lovely pair of handcuffs. In my senior year, we got a new principal because the old one quit at the end of the year prior. Anyway, this was the year the 5th Harry Potter book came out, and even before the school year started, people were calling her Umbridge because of her reputation at her last school. Most of us thought she couldn't be that bad. Then we met her. She really was awful. To make matters worse, she was racist to boot. One of the black teachers didn't agree with her teaching style, so she fired his lazy butt, in her words. Within a week, the NAACP was at the school. Before she finally resigned, there was a student walkout and people started throwing cafeteria fruit at her whenever they saw her. We were all glad to be rid of her. When I was in grade 9, I was sitting in the computer lab working during the communications class. All of a sudden, we hear this loud revving getting louder and louder, something passing by very quickly then fading away. Our teacher ran out of the room after it, and crike, I had no idea the man could move that quickly. I was in crutches due to a sports injury, so I had to hobble out behind the rest of the class as we tried to find out what was going on. Apparently, one of the seniors brought an ATV to school and drove through the halls. What was legendary was that he somehow was never caught. This was in Canada in the early 2000s. There's a video floating somewhere on Facebook, which probably means it's lost forever. Pretty crappy since it was literally one of the early digital cameras taped onto the guy's helmet. If I remember correctly, they let him in through an unused auto classroom's side door and he rode out the back. The area was very rural, so he probably drove it in instead of in the back of a pickup. Most likely rode it straight home too, so yeah, no proof at the end of it. A guy from my high school thought it would be a great idea to streak through the halls on the last day of school. After running around buck naked, people who witnessed it began whispering about some guy streaking. Pretty soon, the entire school was talking about this unknown mystery guy who ran around with his willy out. Biology teacher witnessed it and said, maybe he's just chilly today, but he isn't very well endowed. Soon after, he went to the front office and turned himself in. He apparently walked into a room full of administrators, all women, and just said, "It was me." They all busted out laughing and said, "Just don't do it again, okay?" Low blow from the bio teacher. Viewers, it is time for me to regale you with the story of Jeff. Jeff jumped off the roof of the chapel into a dumpster filled with empty cardboard boxes. 50-foot drop, 8x8 dumpster. Twice a week at our school, the junior and senior guys were on garbage recycling duty after lunch. We'd gather all the garbage bags and recycling from the classrooms and offices. The building was a school attached to a church with offices and a sort of community center. It wasn't a huge building, but it was pretty big. We'd take out all the garbage and trash out to the dumpster, which was set next to some sheds behind the building. That's how it all started. Jeff jumping off a 10 to 12 foot shed into a dumpster full of cardboard boxes. We'd laugh, roll the dumpster out to where the garbage guy could get to it. Someone else rolled it back when the garbage was collected. One day, Jeff climbed the backstop of the baseball field right near the dumpsters. That was a 25 to 30 foot drop, I think. He made that one look easy. Then he dropped in from out of a tree. That was probably about 40 feet. Finally, about a month from our graduation, he told us his plan. He had to break into the crawl space above the chapel, accessible by a padlocked trapdoor on the third floor of classrooms, then climb up through the attic space of the chapel and onto the roof. The chapel parking lot sloped sharply by about 7 to 8 feet, which is where the 50-foot drop comes in. We saved boxes for weeks, set them up at the dumpster, put it in the parking lot about 15 feet from the chapel wall, and watched him jump. Our school has a huge statue of a Mustang at the front because our mascot is a Mustang, naturally. It's about 40 feet up above the entryway, so everyone sees it. One morning, there was a bright pink adult toy on it because Mustangs are male and our huge statue was neutered. It took them a while to get it off of there because they didn't want to ruin the statue or leave any piece of the evidence behind, and it was too heavy to remove from its place, so there it stayed with a banner hung across the entryway blocking the statue. Nobody knows who did it except for the masterminds of the crime. For information, the school was in southwest Pennsylvania.
Ha! Took him a while to get it off!
My first day of high school. I was starting at a whole new neighborhood from moving and knew no one, so I kept to myself. I didn't handle crowds all too well, but I mustered the courage to get out of bed and get ready for school. I ran downstairs and talked to my dad about what I expected to get out of the day and ate breakfast. I walked out to the corner to catch the school bus, and that was awful. Nowhere to sit as everyone felt they each had their own dang seat. Story short, I made it to school. As soon as we made it to the school, I started walking to my locker. There were so many people, I was about to lose my mind, and I asked myself if it could get any worse. It did. A girl bumped me from behind to get ahead to catch up with someone. In one swift action, she ripped off her backpack and unzipped it to pull out a kitchen knife to stab the girl directly in front of me right in the back. I froze. I couldn't breathe. I felt dizzy. I turned around and walked straight home. I lived about 10 miles away. I just kept walking. I never looked back. I just wanted to make it home, crawl upstairs, and sleep in. One hot day in June, when I was in 6th or 7th grade, there was basically a riot at our school. Pretty much every kid in the school at lunch recess gathered at the office entrance to the school and started chanting, "It's too hot! We want to go home!" It was pretty incredible. A teacher at one point came out and said, "We're calling the police," to no avail. Finally, the bell rang, and everyone cheered and went inside. No one I've talked to remembers this event. A student accidentally butt-dialed his mother while the class was watching Platoon. The SWAT team showed up. Apparently some of the guys a few years ahead of me got into the principal's car, took off the brakes, and pushed it up a makeshift ramp to the roof of the shed. I don't know how he got it down. The guys in my year managed to swipe the vice principal's smoking pipe. They put up ransom posters everywhere. In another class, they managed to get into the ceiling tiles and plug socket, so they took an old phone with a dirty ringtone and a charger and left it up there. For whatever reason, because of acoustics, the sounds seemed to shift around the room as you walked. The number got passed around so people could call whenever they needed to disrupt the class for a while. 853 missed calls, 2 missed SMS messages. Seems like every couple months you practice fire drills, and one day the alarm goes off. We start making our way down the stairwell and there's smoke. I get outside and say to somebody, "Wow, they make these fire drills so realistic, smoke and everything." The reply I got back was, "The school really is on fire." So, yeah, my school caught on fire. That was legendary. I'm not the brightest tool in the shed. Somebody! Kid gets yelled at, runs out of the school into the woods. Helicopters come and search for hours for the kid. School goes on lockdown. SWAT team finds him a mile away eating Snickers in the woods. Comes back next week like nothing happened. I saw the whole thing out the window. Very crazy. Happened last month. For 5 consecutive Halloweens in a row, someone managed to set off a smoke bomb in one of the stairwells, causing the school to have to be let out early. They do it just after lunch, after most everyone had just entered their first afternoon class. It was amazing. Like, heck yeah, getting to go home 2 hours early on Halloween. A massive Roman candle fight involving about 50 kids in the middle of the field on Halloween night. Every Easter, our religious education teacher bolted a big wooden cross onto the wall and people could volunteer to go on the cross. You stood on a little platform and there were leather straps to hold your hands in place. He said that if anyone stayed on for longer than 5 minutes, he paid them £5, but nobody ever managed it. This was 6 years ago. 2 years ago, the app Yik Yak was growing in popularity at my school. Maybe about 25% of the student population had it, but since it's anonymous, people just started roasting other people through it. Just as people were no longer using Yik Yak, our craphead principal heard about people roasting other people. He made an announcement talking about Yik Yak and digital citizenship. Naturally, everyone re-downloaded the app, and anybody who didn't previously have it downloaded it as well. Word quickly got out that some teachers got Yik Yak as well and were monitoring it. People started to post stuff like "fight in the art hallway" and laugh as a group of 3 teachers would speed walk by then towards the art hallway, only to find out there was no fight and see the next post "fight in the cafeteria." This went on for 45 minutes until people moved on to better pranks. "I'm pulling the fire alarm next period." Our craphead principal misread this as firearm and called a lockdown on the school which lasted for 80 minutes, and there were cop cases all around the school. Later that night, my school was on the news, and Yik Yak is now blocked within 100 meters of any school in my school board. TLDR, my school got Yik Yak banned in my entire school board. Maybe it wasn't just my school board, maybe it's all of Canada or something. I'm really not too sure. I went to a professional training high school. We had to choose a major for our senior year, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we would spend the entire day in classes involving our chosen major. Strange, yeah, only lasted for a few years. Now it's just a regular magnet school. Whatever. Here's my story. My tech teacher was cool as heck. He'd give us a project on Tuesday morning, and we'd have until Thursday afternoon to turn it in. If we were done early, have fun on the internet. If late, well, that's a strike on your grade. Most of the students busted their butt on projects on Tuesdays, so we could watch Jerry Springer on the TV cart in the back of the room on Thursdays. Me and 2 other kids would play Warcraft 2 on the network computers we set up. Seriously, this teacher didn't give a crap as long as our work was done. One Thursday, one of the students in my class was flipping around the in-service channels the school had. Sometimes they would play a movie on it for some class. Guess what? Adult films. Hardcore black-on-black adult films. Student quickly turned it down and turned the TV from the line of view of the teacher. Teacher still heard it. He came over, coffee cup in hand, looked at the class, looked at the TV that wasn't turned off in time, looked back at the class, took a sip. "First off, if anyone offended? No? Keep it low. If someone comes in, turn it off." I hope that teacher is living their best life. A guy drove through the school on a dirt bike. He was doing wheelies and dodging the supervisors who couldn't catch up to the dirt bike on their golf carts. Then, later that day, he posted the video he recorded of the whole thing from a GoPro on Twitter. He was a legend. I was in an all-boys high school, and this is just one of the many pranks and stuff we did. This happened a few years before I was in the school, but one guy decided to get back at one of the old crappy teachers we had whose class was on the 2nd floor. He decided to purposefully not do his homework to get in trouble as to set the plan in motion. She was also constantly picking on him, and that day he started crying, fake obviously, and saying he can't take it anymore, etc. He then proceeded to jump out of the window onto a high jump mattress that was placed underneath the window by his friends. Before the teacher could look out of the window, they removed it, and he went to lie down on the ground in a manner which resembled a mangled body. The teacher freaked out, went to fetch the principal and nurse, etc., and before they got up there, he got up and went back to class and sat down at his seat as if nothing happened. Teacher was speechless. Like I said, this happened a few years before I was in the school, so I didn't really hear about the aftermath of their shenanigans. It's also possible that it never happened, and that it's an urban legend going around. In high school, we weren't allowed to wear costumes for Halloween. My senior year, a giant group of us, about a good half or 3/4 of the class, decided that we were going to dress up anyway and meet in the parking lot before school to march in together. I spent the night before making my costume, which was a suit of armor made out of cardboard with metallic tape, a sword made the same way, and one of those broomstick horses. The next day, we all gathered like we had said and marched in together. It was hilarious, but I guess they found out, so the deans and assistant deans were waiting for us in the cafeteria to take our IDs so we could report to detention. One of my friends had dressed up as an ATM that he made out of cardboard. When they asked him for his ID, he was ready and slipped it out of a slot like a debit card. The best part was at the end of the day when we all gathered for detention. They didn't have enough room for us and all the other people that were there for other reasons. Out of frustration, they decided to make our detentions Saturday ones and spread them out. It was totally worth it though. Strap in, this one's a long one. At our school in the UK, on the year 11's final day of the year, they would do Egg and Flour Day. Essentially, pelting the lower years with eggs and flour. This was a long-standing tradition at my school and went back decades. As you can imagine, with parents understandably annoyed at the sight of the kids coming home covered in mess, the school received a lot of complaints. Because of this, the school clamped down on it in the past 2 to 3 years with huge punishments for those caught taking part. To get around this, the Year 11s typically moved the location to somewhere off grounds where students could be ambushed on the way home, typically the local shops. Anyway, it was our turn. We were the Year 11s now. We wanted to make our mark. A group of around 10 or so of us got together towards the end of the year and started brainstorming. It took us about a week to come up with it, and it was perfect. Or so we thought. Here was the plan. The school was recently going through some renovations, so a few things were moved around and a few areas were off limits, including one of the fields. Now, this field was where we would go in the event of a fire drill. Because of this, the fire drill point was moved to the tennis courts. Great. Why was this great? Because the tennis courts bordered on the local woods. The very edge of these woods were bordered by incredibly dense growth that was very difficult to see anything through. Between the growth and the tennis courts was a 10-foot fence, and just behind the growth was a pathway. Perfect. So the plan was set. We'll send a guy inside, get him to pull the fire alarm, then send a barrage of eggy flower death to the unsuspecting lower year peasants beyond the fence. Skip forward to the day of the event. We sent Tim in to be the man on the inside. We were ready and waiting in the woods, armed to the teeth with pancake ingredients. We waited a long time. It must have been an hour and a half at that point. We'll come back to this later. This was before mobile phones, so we had no contact with the man of the inside. An oversight. We sent in Christian to find out what was going on, and we waited. Not long this time, 20 minutes later, the bell went off. It was happening. First, we could only hear the piercing ring of the bell. A minute later, the loud chatter of many prepubescent voices. It got louder and louder. The tennis court was filling up. Students were getting into their lines. We waited for the perfect moment to strike. A few more minutes later, things quietened down. We started to hear the teachers shooting out names, going through their registers. This was it. Time to strike. With the students now silent, it was time to unsilence them. Without saying a word, we unleashed. Cartons of eggs were emptied into the air, over the fence and down onto the underlings into the most satisfying crack splats. Flour baggies were spilt and tossed over, leaving trails of white smoke before landing with a puff and filling up the area with clouds of potential biscuit. The screams, oh, they were glorious. The complete sound of chaos. It started with silence, shock as to what was going on. Then the fear set in. Nobody wanted to be egged. The tennis courts exploded into a mass of running kids, dodging yolk, trying to get out of the way. Teachers trying to find out what was going on, barking orders and trying to calm everyone down to little success. And that was it. Within 60 seconds, we had exhausted our ammo and it was time to retreat. Laughing hysterically and celebrating our accomplishment, we melted back into the woods and fell back to our meeting point. It was done. We were legends. Now let's fast forward a week. Remember Tim, the guy on the inside who took too long pulling the alarm? Turns out he didn't pull the alarm, because we noticed they were all covered by CCTV. Another oversight. When Christian went in, he didn't bother looking and pulled the first alarm he came across. He was called into the school a few days later and ordered to give a list of names. It was either he did or prom would be canceled that year. Can't blame him really, I probably would have done the same thing. Those who were on the list, the choice was either 8 hours community service in the school or be barred from prom. We all took the service and spent the day with the school caretaker doing absolutely nothing. It was great. 10 out of 10 would egg again.
Military veterans. What are your best stories from boot camp? Just a foreword here, folks. Due to the military tradition of swearing like a sailor, or in this case, like a soldier, there will be by necessity a certain amount of language replacement in this video, more so than I've had to do in any other video at the time of writing. Assume that if a phrase seems slightly mild, I've been editing it to make it safe for YouTube. Thanks, narrator. I had been in boot camp for like 3 days. We were downstairs in formation at attention with our stupid safety flashlights about to march to PT. Obviously, when at attention, you're not supposed to move. Then I suddenly had an itch on my nose. Only happens when you're at attention. So I tried to sneak out a quick scratch, but for some reason my brain shut down and my dumb idiot self decided to use my flashlight. I scratched my nose and was almost home free until I had this weird thought. I wonder how bright this is. So I stick the flashlight to my eye, click on, click off, go back to attention. No sooner than my hand hit my side, I hear, "What the frick was that?" I was immediately pulled out of formation and screamed at by no less than 6 drill instructors. They screamed some of the funniest insults I have ever heard until this day. Then they lead me to every squad who was formed outside, 6 I think, and made me demonstrate my amazing and godlike talents for all 6 squads before letting me return to formation. Oh, there are so many stories to choose from. One of the funniest is who we had to salute. Every living being, literally. So I'm walking back from a med appointment I had when a squirrel crosses my path. So I render a snappy salute and bark out a, "Good morning, sir," just as an officer is walking across the street from me. He ran across the street to investigate just who the heck I was saluting. I responded, "The squirrel, sir." He said, "What the frick? You saluted a squirrel?" "Yes, sir." "Who's your company commander?" "Petty Officer Shanks, sir." "Okay, move on, dummy, and stop saluting squirrels." "Yes, sir." One of my platoon buds was a bit of a masochist and got off hard to the sergeant yelling at him. It was sort of funny to watch this sergeant berate him for a good 5 minutes, and then he'd run off to rub one out in the washroom. One time we were all sleep deprived and Sarge was just ragging on him, telling him he's made of stronger stuff and to keep going, you weakling, before he fell over and said, "Oh, frickin' crap." Pretty sure he came in his pants and passed out. Navy in 2003. We were out on the grinder, which is our name for the asphalt area, and you can't speak unless spoken to out there. RDC is feeling playful and shouts my name. "What adult fun time position creates the ugliest babies?" Me, both thinking and not thinking at the same time because I knew the answer to the joke. "I don't know, petty officer. Why don't we ask your mother?" He turned beet red and everyone in my division let out a gasp. There was some yelling after that, but later that day he called me into his office and told me no hard feelings. So in the end, not bad. We had a kid in my boot camp platoon named Jackson. The senior drill instructor was Sergeant Jackson. Poor Recruit Jackson was known as Recruit Laundry Number 38 for the whole time, because he didn't rate the name Jackson. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the fine contributors to these stories shall list the standout names of their squads. We had a private named Whore. The drill sergeant took one look at his name and said, "Too frickin' easy." Never mocked him for it. We had a Barbie. The poor guy got away without a word until one day at FTX, the drill sergeant wakes us up at 3 in the morning and the song "Barbie Girl" over the loudspeakers and a very specific dedication. Platoon 3117 had a recruit Dumcum, who was a ginger Canadian, and a Redick, who was black. We had a trainee named Balls. Yep, Balls. None of the TIs ever gave her crap for it, but man, if every single one of them didn't pause and try not to laugh during roll call. My surname is Quick. Same thing happened to me. Although it made marching orders like, "Platoon, by the quick march," amusing. One time I yelled out, "Just me, Corporal?" Everyone laughed. I got yelled at. Good times. Navy boot camp had a female with the last name Guzzler. They had to change her rank to fireman because all the RDCs that saw or heard the name swarmed on it. We had a guy named Pajarianon. Day 1, our chief RDC told him, "Yep, I can't pronounce that crap. Unless I say otherwise, your name is P13. Throughout boot, he acquired the names P13, PJ, Pija, and Mr. P. The first couple of weeks of boot are full of medical and dental exams, and if you need a procedure, you get it done right there. Tons of guys had their wisdom teeth pulled, and we had one guy come back right before lights out with his mouth full of gauze and loopy from the drugs. Our DI called us all to the center of the room, formed us up, and then told us to sit Indian style on the floor, and that Recruit Toothy was going to tell us a bedtime story. He pulled up a chair for Toothy and then told him to tell us the story of the Battle of the Monitor and Merrimack. Toothy mumbled that he didn't know the story, so the DI told him to just make it up, and for every fact that he got right, we'd get to sleep an extra 5 minutes in the morning. What followed was like a live episode of Drunk History, minus any factual accuracy. As best as Toothy could recall, the Monitor was British and the Merrimack was Old Ironsides, and that in the end, they shot the crap out of each other and everyone died. The end. We were all dying laughing, but the DI sat there stone-faced. After Toothy was done, DI just stood up and said, "That is exactly how it happened. Well done." Got up, turned off the lights, and walked out. Got a bladder infection in boot camp. I peed the bed and tried to hide it as long as possible. I was afraid that if I admitted to it, then I would be kicked out. I was able to hide the urine-soaked mattresses by switching them out with extras that were to the back of the TIE squad bay every morning before the drill instructors woke up. This went on for a couple of weeks before someone told on me. The drill instructor wasn't exactly sympathetic about my situation. While everyone was getting ready, he had me take my sheets to the quarterdeck and do push-ups with my face dipping into the pee on every down movement. That kind of sucked. After breakfast, I was told to meet the corpsman, and after I'd be sent to a doctor, and my separation from the Marines would be started before I even earned that title. Screw that noise, I'm going to finish this crap. So instead of going to see the doctor, I wandered around MCRD San Diego aimlessly for 3 hours, while trying to pull a look off where my face always looked like I was moving with purpose. It worked. Not one Marine stopped me to ask what I was doing. When I finally went back to my squad bay, I simply told our scribe that the doctor said to have me woke by firewatch every 3 hours. The DI that laughed as I was leaving asked me how soon I was leaving when I returned. I told him the lie and he bought it. Got lucky. My name for the duration, Recruit Peabody, not so lucky. I ended up graduating and serving 8 years honorably. Not my story, but from a friend who was a couple of weeks behind me in basic. Air Force training, San Antonio, Texas. It's week 2 or week 3 of the 6-week training course, and it's chow time. As with every other basic chow, you queue up, keep your mouth shut, follow the designated lines, get your food, and eat quickly and quietly. Do not get up from your table until the designated time. Fail to follow any of these procedures will result in a crap storm courtesy of Hurricane Angry Fricking Training Instructor. Every flight that goes through basic has that weird kid that just doesn't quite fit in for one reason or another. My flight had a southern kid who unfortunately supported every negative stereotype about the southern US there was. He was Cletus the slack-jawed yokel made flesh. My friend's flight, however, had a kid who was quiet, calculated, removed, and quite possibly a sociopath. During this particular time at chow, he was sat down with his food and ate a decent portion of it. Suddenly, he stands up and without following the designated paths, makes a beeline to the ice cream machine. Trainees are not allowed ice cream until they have TI permission, which doesn't usually happen until the final week. That did not stop this kid from getting 2 ice cream cones, 1 for each hand. He walks back to his table, passing the snake pit, where the instructors eat, along the way. He begins to go to town on these ice cream cones, alternating licks between one and the other. The instructors at the snake pit are in shock at the sheer audacity. All heads turn to his training instructor, their smirks and furrowed brows encouraging him to rush over and psychologically destroy this kid. He gets up and rushes over. "What the heck, trainee? Who in the heck said you had permission to get ice cream? I don't recall giving you permission to..." The verbal barrage continues as the TI assaults him with every harsh word he can muster. He ends his tirade with, "Who the hell do you think you are?" The trainee turns his head slowly, looks the training instructor dead in the eye, and without a smile or any other display of emotion, softly, confidently says, "I'm Batman." The TI was nonplussed. He was either so unprepared for that response, or thought it was so hilarious that he had to turn around in order to save face. He walked back to the snake pit without a word. Batman finished his ice cream. I mean, does anybody else think that the instructor had just realized that there was a potential sociopathic serial killer in the flight? Another commenter writes, "Well, he did get permission. Oh man, I left the snake pit after my 3rd recyclement. After a couple of months, I knew my crap. I grabbed a dessert with every meal. One time I had 7 of them on me at the same time." "Oh, you think you deserve a dessert?" "Yes, sir." "In what year did the Air Force separate from the Army?" "Sir, trainee dumbass reports as ordered. 1947, sir." Another TI. "Who is your flight chief?" "Sir, trainee dumbass reports as ordered. My flight chief is Master Sergeant so-and-so, sir." "You give a new reporting statement with every answer, trainee." "Sir, trainee dumbass reports as ordered. Only upon the initial report or when switching instructors, sir." This went on for some time. They pretty much just let me have the cake after that one. I had the pleasure of witnessing this one myself. You've already heard about the snake pit. Well, the MTIs on mine regularly pull out trainees and question them on stuff we're supposed to know. One day, they pull out one poor sap from our brother flight. It went roughly as follows. "Trainee, what's the insignia of the full colonel?" Trainee, "The insignia of the colonel is a bird, sir." "What type of bird exactly?" "Permission to adjust, sir." Adjust. The trainee then proceeds to set his tray on their table, puts his hands up in the Egyptian pose but with both hands outward, turns his head to the side and says, "Like this, sir." The onlooking TIs nearly choked on their food while the questioning TI stared at him dumbfoundedly for a few moments before yelling at him to, "Get your crap off our table and get the frick out of my sight." Oh, that was probably one of the best times I've seen a TI at loss for words. After someone addressed the drill sergeant by his name, not drill sergeant name, the DS screamed at him, "Oh, do you know me? Are we friends? Do you come over to my house on the weekend, drink beer, and have adult fun times with my wife?" Still one of my favorites. My favorite story is from 2006. We were salty Marine recruits in our last week before graduating and going home. Normally, I guess they like to bring in new super motivated drill instructors to mess with us. Well, one night in formation before we hit the racks, the new sergeant notices one of my friends, Private Law, was rocking back and forth. He says to Law, "Quit rocking, Law." To which Law yelled, "This recruit will never stop rocking, sir." One of the first days in basic, a guy in my platoon was standing at attention while having his room inspected by the sergeant. Because there was a large piece of fuzz/fluff on his shirt that immediately drew the sergeant's attention. Imagine a female French-Canadian sergeant with this accent, although obviously much harsher. "Recruit Bloggins, what is that on your shirt? Is that a fluffy?" "Yes, sergeant." "Why is there a fluffy on your shirt, Bloggins?" "I must have missed it, sergeant." "Missed it? But it is so huge. How did you miss such a big fluffy?" She plucks it off him. "Hold out your hand." He holds out his hand and she places it on his palm. "This is Mr. Fluffy. Find a home for him, like a pill bottle or something. From now on, whenever I want to see Mr. Fluffy, you must bring him to me." And so, for the rest of basic, every time the sergeant found a piece of fuzz, even on someone from a different platoon, she would yell out, "Mr. Fluffy!" And Bloggins would have to march over to her double time and present Mr. Fluffy, and she would formally hand him the new piece of fuzz to add to Mr. Fluffy. There was hell to pay if he didn't have Mr. Fluffy with him at all times. Every unit has its mascot. I'm just glad that in this case it was a fluffy rather than a furry. Great Lakes, 1994, Company 159. I had a bottom bunk. Guy on top bunk was a guy who barely spoke English. One day we were marching around and he was too afraid to speak up and let the company commander know he had to poop. He pooped his dungaree pants and left a trail that those marching behind him walked through. When CC realized what was up, he halted the formation, grabbed the guy and ran into the nearest building. When they reappeared, Poopy Pants had removed his t-shirt and fashioned it into a diaper to make it back to our barracks building. One night, the guy in the top bunk next to mine had a nightmare and in his sleep he jumped out of his rack. He crashed into my bunk, spraining his arm, ankle and putting a gash into his head, and had no idea what was going on. Another night, I was on fire watch, making my rounds at 3 o'clock in the morning. The A-Rock, one of the recruit leadership positions, was a big macho guy who decided he couldn't take it anymore. He tried a belt around his neck and was going to hang himself when I caught him. The chief on duty was teed off that he had to be awakened, called for assistance, and that's the last time we saw the A-Rock. My brother was in the chow hall and witnessed a TI call out someone who had placed their flashlight in their belt. I guess you're not supposed to do that. So the TI lights him up. "Is that where you keep your fricking flashlight? Is it a fricking lightsaber, Luke?" He made him stand at the end of 2 cafeteria lines, holding his flashlight like a lightsaber and striking dead the airmen that were leaving the 2 lines. At one point, there was a lull in traffic and the TI screams, "Oh, so fricking lightsabers don't make noise when they're motionless." So old buddy has to make the vroom, vroom noise as he waits for his next victim. The worst part of being there is that you can't laugh or you get punished too, and DIs can be some funny mofos. When I was in bed, one of the cafeteria walkers walked through the chow hall while we were eating. She was quite obese and wearing apple-bottom jeans. Our DI was sitting at the head of the table and started humming Get Low. Naturally, we all laughed. So after the chow, we went back to our bunks and got smoked. DI put Get Low on the speakers, and we did jumping jacks to the beat until they sang Hit the Floor. At which point we had to hit the floor and do push-ups while singing. And every time we laughed, he started the song over. I still shudder when I hear it. I'm an Army veteran. One morning in basic training, it was about midway through our 3-month cycle, and we were lined up for breakfast chow. While waiting in line, we had to stand at parade rest in columns of 2 in our PT uniform. We couldn't move or anything at the risk of being pointed out and screamed at. The uniform consisted of somewhat black short shorts and a grey t-shirt that said Army on the front. Well, the guy 3 rows in front of me had one of those no-reason cases of the morning wood. And the drill sergeant caught him as he was trying to move to hide it away. He pulls him off to the side and starts screaming, "What's wrong with you, Private? Why are your privates saluting in the chow line?" Of course, this yelling spreads to the ears of 2 other drills, and they come over as well. "Hey, Battle, come look at this! Hey, at ease that crap, Private!" As this was said, they noticed, and one drill sergeant bent down, face inches away from the full-mast culprit, and bellowed, "At ease!" Private, you better get that crap in check. I entered into the building before I could hear anything else about it. To this day, I still don't know how the drill sergeants went through that without so much as a smirk. I don't know what I'd do if someone shouted, "at ease," directly at my morning wood. Nothing in life so far has prepared me for that. We had a drill sergeant make a private carry a branch everywhere she went, so it would replenish all the oxygen she was wasting. We had a guy named Fitzwater. We called him Fatswater. We weren't just calling him that because he was fat, which he was also a lazy piece of crap who was constantly pretending to be hurt to get out of work. Anyways, he got teed off at us one day and said, "If anyone else calls me Fatswater again, I'm going to tell drill sergeant." Immediately the drill sergeant walks in and goes, "Hey, what's up, Fatswater?" Who'd have thought that exposing a weakness to people who spend their lives demeaning other people could go so poorly for this man? A mother of one of the other privates sent him a photo of a drill sergeant trashing a locker, with a letter saying, "Hope your drill sergeant isn't as mean as this," smiley face. It turned out that it was a picture of our drill sergeant. He had posted that on Facebook and it ended up going viral. She was just looking up pictures of drill sergeants and it just happened to be him. A woman in my company was from Africa. She had a graduate degree in some science, so she was very smart, but some things were lost on her, especially figures of speech. When we were on the firing range, we were told to keep the rifle up and down the range, meaning no matter what way you were facing, the end of the rifle was in the air and pointed down range. She didn't get that and swung her rifle all over the place. Everyone hit the ground. One of the drill sergeants yelled and asked if her brain took a crap in her head. She didn't understand that either. When I was on Paris Island, we were drilling on the parade deck and this one recruit kept screwing up. Our drill sergeant stopped us, stalked up to the recruit and started wearing him out. Gave him the classic DI, screaming in both ears, spit flying, smacking him in the face with his cover. Eventually the recruit broke down and silent tears started streaming down his face. The DI took his finger, wiped a tear from the recruit's eye and licked it, telling the recruit, "Now I own your soul." Fricking intense. One recruit in my platoon was getting IT'd and the DI took his soul. Then, I crap you not, the recruit responded with, "What soul, sir?" The DI let him get back online. This is one of the hidden advantages of being a ginger. A cousin of mine was going through training for the Royal Australian Navy. They have leader cadets amongst their ranks, who you must refer to as leader and not sir. One of these leaders was prowling about and asked my cousin if he was all sorted out. "Yes, sir," said my cousin on reflex. "What the frick did you say, cadet? 20 push-ups right now." My cousin, you should know, is a massive crap stirrer. Couldn't help himself. "Yes, sir," he says, getting down to do the push-ups. 50 frickin' push-ups, the leader barks. The way he told the story, the timing was just perfect. "Yes, sir." So he had to do around 100 push-ups, his arms gave out around 70 apparently. Later on, they were doing open water survival training, floating around in a blow-up raft in the middle of the ocean. The leaders, who were submerged below the raft in scuba gear, would occasionally leap up and drag a cadet into the water to simulate being knocked overboard by a wave. Sure enough, the leader my cousin had crossed was under the boat. He burst out like a shark, seized my cousin by his collar, and dragged him into the freezing water. Holding him down for longer than was probably necessary, the leader eventually released him. As my cousin was climbing back into the raft, shuddering from the cold, the leader asked him, "Still think you're funny, cadet?" As you can guess, the reply was, "Yes, sir." He got grabbed and pseudo-drowned again immediately. I guess he's a glutton for punishment. He passed training, by the way. Navy man here, got a few great ones for everybody. Spring of 2011. Whole berthing in the shower together singing It's Raining Men when the RDC, the Recruit Division Commander, E4 and above, comes in and screams, "You swinging pricks got about 20 seconds before I come in and rain my boot up your butt." Large black Navy Chief, E7, walks into our compartment one day and says he feels like making it rain. Oh God, please no. Then before I could get ready, he's already dropping people on the deck and making them do intense exercises. He walks up to one recruit and asks him, "Does Chief like Hennessy or Hypnotic?" "Hennessy, Chief." "Wrong, you racist. I like Jack Daniels." Then proceeds to turn up the PT on this individual. Next person. "Is Chief good at basketball or football?" Basketball?" "Wrong. Chief is good at everything." Another time we were offered ice cream for supper one Sunday. We all took ice cream because, well, we frickin' deserved it. We knew we were going to pay for it, so I got the bright idea to put all the wrappers on my tray. So we walked in a straight line to throw our trays away, and the RDCs are looking for any signs of ice cream. Then they come to me as I'm throwing away the wrappers. "Recruit, did you eat 60 frickin' ice cream bars?" "Yes, Chief, every one of them."
What happened at a wedding that let you know the marriage was going to end in a divorce? The groom looked drunk and the bride seemed incredibly angry. Then there was this woman walking around during the reception placing bets on when they would divorce. I later found out she was the mother of the groom. The groom said in his speech, "When I joined a dating agency, I never thought I'd be so lucky as to find my own personal cook, dishwasher, and washing machine. Not only is that a crappy way to describe anyone, he's in for a nasty surprise when he realizes his wife is actually a complete diva and will expect him to do all those things for her. Bad relationship all around." Groom's mistress found out he was getting married and showed up at the wedding, in the middle of the I do's, walked right up on stage and smacked him in the face, pulling a Will Smith slap before the Will Smith slap even happened. The groom stabbed his new brother-in-law to death with the knife used to cut the wedding cake, no less. Well, technically it happened at the reception, not the wedding. Yeah, that's a detail I was worried about, and not the fact that somebody was stabbed to death at a wedding. Backstory. About 4 years before the wedding, the wife's brother had shot her in the leg during an argument. Yes, alcohol was involved. At the reception, he started loudly telling the guests that he wished he'd shot her in the head instead, at which point the groom got stabby. Alcohol was, again, involved. At the rehearsal dinner, the groom's mom is in tears because he looks miserable. And he was. We all knew it. During the vows they had written for each other, the bride starts with, "I know I could be a pretty terrible person, and I don't know why you've stuck around, but that's all going to change starting today." They were divorced a year later. She flinched when he turned to kiss her. They were divorced within 6 months. The bride had the minister put "till death or divorce do us part" into the ceremony. My cousin, the bride, told us as she was going from table to table thanking the guests that she didn't think it would last. We were stunned. They lasted about a year. I thought my sister's wedding was. Her husband got blackout drunk and they got into an argument. He passed out and she ended up throwing a bucket of ice water in his face to snap him out of it. She was devastated about it. Happy ending? He made it up to her big time. Also, he felt very out of it, even the next day. Turns out he had traces of Rohypnol in his system. His own brother roofied him in hopes he wouldn't marry my sister because he wanted their own friendship to remain the same. My brother-in-law has disowned most of his family because of this, and his brother just got out of a 4-year prison sentence. The bride, whom I didn't even know, apparently designated me to help decorate the reception hall prior to the wedding. I went to do so, and her mother was there, telling me in a hushed, scared whisper that I better not mess anything up because the bride would be furious. Everything was to be a certain way, and if it was wrong, there'd be hell to pay. I gave her the benefit of the doubt, chalked it up to wedding anxiety, and during the reception, I tried to chat with her a bit, and she literally rolled her eyes at me. I also didn't see her look at the groom once at the wedding or the reception. They were split less than a year later. Later, the groom confided to me and my husband that the morning of the wedding, he'd been filled with an overwhelming feeling of dread and spent several hours just sitting on his lawn thinking, I shouldn't do this. But it was paid for, tons of guests were waiting, lots of family, including us, had come in from out of state, and he felt he had to go through with it. Apparently, the bride had a history of being awful and controlling. No clue what made him propose to her in the first place. Edit. Just Facebook stalked the ex-bride. Her latest status update is announcing her wedding date with a new guy. Someone jokingly asked in the comments if they set a date for the divorce. Oh snap! Holy crap. My cousin Jan's wedding was basically just a preamble to an elaborate dance of divorce that we all knew was coming from the moment the engagement began. For context, this took place 15 years ago in the backwoods of North Carolina. My family is just a generation or two removed from snake handling in church, so some of the wackiness is the product of upwardly mobile inbreeding and redneck gumption. Just a few things that come to mind. Her fiancé proposed to her over the corpse of her father. He was over with the family watching TV when Jan's dad collapsed on the floor. He died before emergency services arrived. Her boyfriend grabbed her hands as she was sitting next to her father's body, pulled her up to her feet, and then asked her to marry him. He later said that he didn't want her to get away. The fiancé then disappeared for a month the week after the funeral. Nobody knew where to find him. The bride's white trash mother told Jan that she had to get married within 4 months because she, the mother, my aunt, planned to move to another state with her new boyfriend to avoid bill collectors. When Jan's fiancé showed back up, he was cagey and weird. Eventually, it came out that he'd been living with his ex-girlfriend because she insisted that he had to give to her a month of his life or she'd take him to court for child support that he was supposed to be paying on their infant son, but had never paid. Throughout all of this, Jan continued to insist that she wanted to marry him. My mother and I did most of the wedding prep and arrangements. Jan's mom, despite insisting on the 4-month timeline to help pay for the wedding before her move, never contributed a dime. and we were both pretty convinced that the wedding was going to be canceled at any moment. But the day arrived, and so did the principal players. At the wedding itself, the groom walked around drinking PBR out of a massive travel thermos with a novelty straw and told everyone who would listen that Jan was a good starter wife. Jan threw several tantrums about stupid stuff, including one in which she accused the groom of stealing her drink. He told her she was a dumb woman, but it all worked out because she then found her drink. The groom pulled the ring off of Jan's finger during the reception and swallowed it as a joke. The groom picked a fight with his father because his dad had asked the ex-girlfriend to stay at home, and the groom had really wanted her to be there. Jan was in the dark about this invitation until the fight broke out. Epilogue, shocking precisely nobody, except possibly Jan herself, they eventually did divorce. Eating the ring caused the groom some discomfort, so they had to cancel their honeymoon to the mountains so that he could go to the ER and get hospital-grade laxatives. They lost money on the cancellation and the ER visit, which they really didn't have to lose. That resulted in some immediate debt problems, and they lost the trailer they planned to rent when they couldn't come up with a deposit. That resulted in both of them moving into the groom's parents' home into his old bedroom. Things went downhill from there. The groom's ex-girlfriend popped back up less than 3 months after the wedding, heavily pregnant with a second child. She went after him for another shared month, but Jan wasn't cool with it. The ex ended up taking him to court for child support. Jan got a second job to make ends meet while resigning herself to living with her in-laws for a while longer. One day, after he dropped her off at work, the groom sold Jan's car. He then disappeared for several more weeks. She lost both jobs and shortly thereafter realized she was pregnant. The groom accused her of cheating because he thought he couldn't have more than 2 children in a lifetime, and his ex-girlfriend had already filled the quota. As I understand it, this is what ultimately caused the rift in their relationship. Back to normal stories. Groom got caught getting frisky with the bridesmaid. That marriage lasted for about 2 hours. When the father of the bride tells the groom, "How can you marry somebody like her? You are too nice. You deserve better." Surely enough, the marriage lasted less than 3 years. During the whole time, the wife was doing drugs and prostituted herself to get money for drugs. We knew the couple was in trouble when they frowned during most of the ceremony and later didn't go on a honeymoon because they couldn't agree on a destination. They had plenty of money, just no desire to compromise. At the end of the reception, the guys were sitting at a table away from everyone else talking, and we asked the groom why he proposed. His answer? Because she was naked. Marriage lasted about 1.5 years. At my brother's wedding, his bride gave him the cheek at the "you may kiss the bride" part. Yeah, she ended up cheating on him with some guy online in less than 1 year. My sister's new husband made out with the bridesmaid on the dance floor of the reception. During the ceremony, when the priest started asking the bride, "Do you take this man to be your..." she started laughing uncontrollably and couldn't stop. It was cute for about 10 seconds and then things got real uncomfortable. They lasted 1 year and change. We all kinda knew the only reason they were getting married was because she got pregnant. Groom got so drunk at the reception he passed out in the honeymoon suite by himself, but not before he latched the door so it couldn't be unlocked from the outside. Seeing the bride kicking the door and hollering at the top of her lungs to be let in at 3 a.m. was not encouraging. They divorced like 2 years later. I was working at a wedding factory. On Monday, we got a call the Saturday wedding was canceled. They were told that they would lose the deposit, around $7,000. Then on Thursday, they said it was back on. When the guests arrived, everyone was mad. It seems they told everyone that it was off, then 2 days later that it was on. The ceremony was about 3 minutes. The bride then changed into sweatpants and then everyone got angry drunk. Well, this won't last long, I thought. Then on the following Monday, the bride walked into my then-wife's divorce attorney's office. Our friend was the girl who had spent a whole year setting up for the one day. They had taken 6 months of dancing lessons, and she has spent a ridiculous amount of time looking good and dressing up her bridesmaids for the wedding, of which my wife was one. So, come the night of the wedding, the groom meets up with his old friends and starts to get blackout drunk. He got so drunk he didn't even recognize us, rather just pushing us aside to get to the bathroom. The worst part was the dance itself. It was really heartbreaking to see them stumble around and watch the panic on her face as he realized he had no idea what was going on. I gave it 6 months at the time, but they ended up 3 years. She ended up marrying another woman. Groom mashed the cake into the pregnant bride's face so hard she went down backwards. Groom and his father ended up fistfighting in the bathroom, cops were called, fun times. It was a shotgun wedding. They proudly proclaimed it as such. Overheard the bride's mother saying that the bride was such a later bloomer for waiting until 19 to trap herself a man. The child is 3 years old and they have been separated, don't know if divorced, since she was 1. Walking in on the groom getting railed by one of the groomsmen in the suite at the resort during the reception. My cousin's wedding. The groom invited his ex, who was also the mother of his 1-year-old son. He and my cousin had been dating for longer than 2 years. and my cousin, who was then very pregnant herself, got into a loud screaming match with him over in a bathroom. They eventually came out and got married, my cousin with puffy red eyes from crying that you can see in every wedding photo that was taken. They spent $50,000 on a Disney wedding, and the bride spent zero time anywhere near the in-laws for several hours. She ran off a week later. While saying the classic "I do," instead of looking deep into his bride's eyes, the groom was peeking at one of the bridesmaids. I do audio-visual for social events, a lot of weddings. At one engagement party, my coworker tells the story of the soon-to-be groom trying to carry off his soon-to-be bride, because he's manly and will have his way with her. Anyways, she is screaming at him to put her down, and when he finally complies, she slaps him right across the face and yells, "I'm not done dancing!" When I was 17, I was a bridesmaid in my 19-year-old cousin's shotgun wedding. After the ceremony, we got into the limo to go to the reception. She turns to me and says, "God, I wish I was single." The groom didn't look at the bride once. Sister's wedding. Husband ends speech saying, "Thanks for settling for me." 18 months later, agreed to divorce. 4 people made speeches. The bride joked about the first time she dated the groom when she was 16 and he was 26. The groom was wasted and spoke about how each of the previous times they broke up didn't count and that they would do it right this time. The maid of honor talked about how even when they were broken up, they still got along, and the best man made crappy jokes. Groom's brother didn't attend because he too had banged the bride before. The groom invited his female friend. She was in the early stages of pregnancy. Towards the end of the night, the bride asked aforementioned friend who the father was. The friend cheerfully said the groom's name. The bride got blackout drunk and asked me to kill her husband. He was busy fighting one of his groomsmen in the other room. They divorced 2 years later. The day of her wedding, I asked my sister-in-law if she was enjoying her day, and all she said was, "It's a freaking nightmare. This is the worst day of my life." Dude said the wrong name at the altar. When I read this one, I went, uh-oh. I was reunited with a family member just before her wedding. We went out drinking, and she proudly pointed out a guy at the bar that she'd just gone on a trip with and had a week-long prenup rail romp. She seemed to think I'd think that was naughty and funny. I just felt bad for her future husband, but figured it was just a bad choice. The day of the wedding, I went to see her in the bridal suite. She had the guy there with him. She screwed him the night before the wedding. They lasted a few years, but it was a miserable few. My cousin married a nice, respectable girl from Connecticut, but he is a not-so-nice, not-so-respectable Massachusetts stereotype from Norfolk County. Cuz got drunk with his band of Mickeys and Sullys the night before, and when I saw him for pictures that morning, he was sucking on a pint of Skull vodka before throwing it in the corner of the church and calling his friend a slur. He had the same grin on his face for every picture. I pumped some coffee into him. We thought we had it under control, but during the ceremony, he flipped off the guest twice. His brother also taped "Help Me" on the bottom of his shoes for when they took the mass. The bride's father was furious. But then came the reception. My mom didn't want to go. I wish we hadn't. Cuz continued sucking down booze, as did his pals. The bride, God save her, wanted to go ahead with the first dance, Stand By Me. Cuz didn't put down his drink, was grabbing her butt during the dance, and finally spilled it all down her dress. She slapped him, he pushed her. Father of the groom charges the dance floor. The bench is clear. My brother and I ask Mom if she wants us to get involved. She grabs her purse and says, "Let's leave." As his buddies were holding Cuz back, she walked over, slapped him, and said, "Thank God your grandmother died, you disgraceful little Mick." Mama is a very quiet woman. We grabbed Mama and hightailed it out. 2 cops passed us on the way in. They began the annulment 1 week later. I haven't talked to him since, although he emailed me asking if he could borrow $5,000. He lives in a camper from what I hear. Friend got married. On his honeymoon, his wife went to the spa. He stayed in the room to chill. Housekeeping came, young cute girl. Friend paid her for head. Told me about all proud. Didn't last a year. Toward the end of the reception, the bride suggested to the groom he run home and change into street clothes so they could clean the venue and get the deposit returned. Groom got back, and bride had opened all the gift envelopes and paid back relatives with the cash they contained. Source: the groom was me. I was in charge of choosing a male strip club for the bachelorette party. I went to check a place out. Bumped into the groom in the audience. We've got a timeline for this one. A bunch of my family members are betting on how long one of my cousin's marriage would last. It's definitely going to end in divorce, but we just don't know when. Here's all the crap that happened. Pre-wedding, the couple can't even agree on invitation card designs, so they decided each would have their own. Some people received 2 invitations. Wedding. They're both from different races, and the groom's family insisted on having a wedding ceremony from their culture too. The bride refused the part where she has to kneel before her husband and wash his feet clean. The groom's family insisted, and she was stuck doing it. The bride got tired with all the photo taking and refused to pose for any more photographs. even though she hadn't taken photos with the groom's extended family. Meanwhile, she had already taken photos with her entire family, extended family, and parents' friends. The groom's cousin told the bride she walked in elegantly and she spent hours crying and refusing to come out for the wedding dinner. Half the groom's family boycotted the wedding over the bride's race and religion. Post-wedding, the bride insisted they should fly first class for their honeymoon. The groom insisted it's a waste of money, even though they had both come from money. The bride flew first class, the groom stuck to economy. Wedding was going okay until the bride and groom got hammered, groom's baby mama ex showed up, and the bride proceeded to lock herself in a room crying and continuing to drink by herself. It was a crap show to say the least. OP says, "How long do you wait to leave in a scenario like that?" I wasn't there, but my neighbor is a wedding DJ. Apparently a couple of weeks ago, she was at a wedding where the bride did her first dance with her ex, who for some reason was invited, because he was a better dancer than her new husband, and she didn't want to get, in her words, shown up. My cousin got his casual hookup pregnant, and somehow they came to the conclusion that they needed to get married. Instead of going and getting quietly married, they decided they needed a gigantic, expensive wedding. Like 5-course meal, 300 plus guests, 12 bridesmaids kind of wedding. Obviously, something like this takes a while to plan, and as a result, she was about 7 months pregnant. Now, nothing wrong with going down the aisle while expecting, but she chose this corseted dress that was cinched so tight it nearly flattened her bump out. As someone who has been pregnant, I can't imagine how uncomfortable that must have been. The fact that they had only known each other 8 months and she was 7 months pregnant was like the elephant in the room the entire wedding. She refused to acknowledge the fact that she was pregnant. She had been out of college for 10 plus years and invited all her sorority sisters. They got up and all sang this weird sorority song together. Very odd for an over 30 woman. I'm probably not explaining it very well, but it was like she was trying to act like she was much younger. They were married about 4 years, way longer than anyone thought it would last. Married less than a year, and a mutual friend, my wife and I, had got married. During the ceremony, my wife is crying and I asked her why, expecting a response of happy for him or something, and she said, "I always thought I will be the one to marry him." She ended up cheating on me with him and we went our separate ways. They only got married because they screwed unprotected on their first date and conceived a child. Fast forward a few months, the bride objects to going to the groom's friend for flowers for the wedding because she has a religious objection to the gay lifestyle, in quotes. Turns out she's also incredibly racist. The groom is not homophobic or racist at all and was appalled to find out that his new wife wouldn't approve of most of his friends. The baby hasn't even been born yet and the divorce is pending. The groom saying the bride looked really chubby in her wedding dress. The groom making fun of the deaf grandmother. The groom existing. Not all of it was at the wedding, but on our way to our honeymoon, we were on a flight with this couple sitting behind us. She boarded the plane with a giant carry-on and a garment bag with a dress in it. Once they found their seats, she shoved her bags at him to put away, and then went to use the lavatory for about 15 minutes. She was really nasty towards him the whole time. Fast forward into running into them at the resort. She was super stuck up and a jerk to every female and all of the staff. She didn't seem to have a problem grinding on 4 or 5 different guys during one of the dance night themed events while her husband drank alone at the bar. Finally, the day of their wedding came, and my husband ran into the groom sitting alone outside of the cafe with a drink in his hand. He sat down to chat with him, and the guy explained that he was freaking out because they had no friends or family at the wedding, because literally no one that knew him liked her or approved of the wedding, and that he wasn't even sure what he was doing there. My husband tells him he's sure it's cold feet, and to just have a drink to calm his nerves. The groom replies that it's his 5th drink. It's like 11 a.m. already. We had an oceanfront villa and they got married right outside of our back door. He looked like he was going to bolt for sure. I guess that was her plan the whole time, trap him on a remote island. Her vows. They were friends of mine who dated for nearly 2 years before their wedding. He loved her more than she loved him, obvious to all our friends, and we suspected she begrudgingly said yes to his proposal. He said his vows first and went on and on about loving her for the rest of his life. During hers, she started with 438 days. That's how long I've loved you. It seemed sweet until she ended her vows with, and I promise to love you for at least 438 more. Most thought nothing of it, and some friends called me a jerk for saying it was a subconscious sign that she wasn't in it for the long haul. She left him exactly that amount of days after the wedding, with the note that said, "I kept my vow to love you for 438 days more, but I can't for a single day more." Called it. At the wedding, bride-to-be turns up 30 minutes late, arrives inconsolably sobbing, helped down the aisle. Ceremony weird and filled with cries from the bride. Afterwards, spoke to the bride's father and asked how things were. His response, "Well, that was like getting a cat in a paper bag." Divorced 3 months later. Backstory, the groom, whom we knew, was from a wealthy family. Bride's family saw money and persuaded their darling daughter to marry the guy. She realized the mistake. She ended up with nothing. His family had money, but the groom was young and had nothing. Screwed up people out here, folks.
Gentlemen, what's the biggest "I'm a princess" red flag? "I don't like cheap stuff" is always a dead giveaway. Also, mothers and sometimes fathers, depending on things. If your girl is BFFs with her mum, she'll end up like her in 20 years. It's like a freaking time capsule sometimes. My bro's wife is like this. The worst sign is when she's BFFs with her crazy witch mother, but only when they're apart. If they can't stand each other and argue all the time when they're together, but talk on the phone constantly when they're apart, run, motherfricker. This B-word is crazy. "Oh, you can take it, you're a guy." My best friend's ex would literally shove him around without even warning him to vent her unrelated bad mood. Would be annoyed with his protests because she was significantly smaller than him and "men can take it." Didn't change the fact that shoving someone into a wall or a chair literally just because you feel like it is as straightforward abusive as you can get. The entitlement of it all. Lack of awareness of the plight of the proletariat and the subjugation of archaic feudal hierarchies. Come and see the violence inherent in the system. And now, a flag I had never even considered or encountered, and that is apparently a very common one. I'm a woman, but I've noticed women who are obsessed with Marilyn Monroe are usually terrible in a variety of ways. Frick. This hits hard. I dated a girl for a while in high school. She was fun, had a great sense of humor, and she was absolutely gorgeous. It was high school, and crap happens. We broke up after a little less than a year. Fast forward to 22-year-old me at Walmart in the middle of the night buying bullcrap snacks after work, and who do I see in line? Awesome girl from high school. She's with some guy who I assume is her boyfriend. We talk a little in line and I head home. By the time I get home, I have a text that just says, "He's not my boyfriend, by the way." And that's when I knew that I should pursue this again. We went on our first date and it was just like high school. She was still amazing and I realized that my feelings for her seemed as if they hadn't dulled in the slightest. Everything seemed perfect. I learned that 1, she had gotten her nips pierced, and so I didn't really focus on number 2, which was that she had a portrait of Marilyn Monroe tattooed on her waist with a dermal piercing for the beauty mark. I thought, that's weird, but those are great. Little did I know that there was a pot of crazy brewing underneath all of it. We dated for less than 2 months when she told me that she didn't want to be together anymore. I was upset, but after talking about our relationship and our feelings, I told her that I understood. A couple of days later, I get a phone call. She is teed off, screaming at me about how much I hurt her. I'm confused, to say the least. She tells me that breaking up with me was a test. I was supposed to fight for her. She wanted to see if we were meant for each other. Needless to say, I blocked her phone number and haven't looked back since. Mail here. Ex loved Marilyn, ditched me for some guy who made more money. Apartment building caught on fire. She stole a Marilyn Monroe painting from the apartment next to ours and half my insurance check. She wouldn't sign off on it unless I gave her half. Happened days after she took all of her crap and moved out. Yes, I fought and did my homework. No win situation. She even went on to stop responding to me when I had $1,000 worth of checks I needed her to sign for my expense reimbursement. The insurance company got to keep the money. I had a brief phase where I felt I related to her and people called me Marilyn. Can confirm, I was a mess at the time. Over the winter, I worked with a girl who would say to everyone, "Girls hate me because I'm cute and I steal their boyfriends." I tried to avoid her after that. Girls hate you because you're a B-word. When her mother says, "Boys just flock around her like bees around honey," she agrees with a big smile. Respect for her brother responding with, "You mean like flies around crap?" My wife's maiden name was King. She maintains that she is a princess by definition. Can't argue with her logic. Based on your working, I assume that she changed her name when she married you. By that logic, you could argue that she abdicated. I was dating this girl that absolutely loved KFC's fried chicken. While she was in the shower one time, I decided to run to KFC and surprise her with a quick little meal. I did not get mashed potatoes, never really cared for their take on mashed taters. She threw me out upon finding there were no mashed potatoes. Threw me out. Talks about how much she hates the $200 marble iPhone case her mum bought her. Constantly calls her brand new MacBook Pro a piece of crap because she doesn't know how to use it, then proceeds to throw it to the ground and drop it all the time. Breaks the $200 marble iPhone case. Excited when mum buys her a new one. Yeah, I didn't stick around. Girls are too much drama, that's why I only have guy friends. I hate drama, princess who proceeds to cause all sorts of drama. I think it's a fairly good, if not universal indicator that if any person, male or female, tends to push away their friends, they may not be great at relationships either. Refusing to do something on the grounds that she's too good for it. Not taking out the garbage, cleaning a bathtub, whatever. Nobody's too good to be humble and helpful. Anybody who thinks they are is a butthole. A girl that was in my friends group got really angry when I talked about potentially moving houses, and I said that I would ask everyone, including her, for some help. Pizzas and beer guaranteed, of course. She went bat-crap crazy about how girls do not do these kinds of things, and it's rude to even think about asking her. The other girls were livid, referring to herself as a princess, or, I can really be a diva, but cutesy smirk, gotta love me. No, I do not. The only time gotta love me is acceptable for anyone to say is if they're a pink baby dinosaur. After going out a few times, she said, Man, I've gone so overboard spending lately. Hey, can you take care of my credit card debt for me? Me, silent, looking at her oddly, trying to decide if this is a bad joke. I mean, you could be a sugar daddy, couldn't you? Me? No, I'm not that old yet, nor wealthy, and I wouldn't be even if I were. You don't want to be my sugar daddy? That was the end of that relationship. I could maybe be your aspartame daddy, that's about it. I prefer the term splendor daddy. This happened to me, went out once, worst date ever. Ended the night without even a handshake. Made no plans. She texted me to ask to borrow $500 a couple of times. One of my best friends had a girlfriend once say she likes to have nicer things than other people, but doesn't want to work, so he needs to have a good job. Same girl also said she should come before family and God. I'm not religious, but that's still pretty nuts for people who are, which they were. Throwing a tantrum and being teed off at your boyfriend for not proposing the right way. Knew a girl who did this exact thing. We have a tradition at our university where you propose under this huge tree on campus. Only some people do it, not everyone. She literally threw a tantrum even though he planned a sweet proposal that would have pleased any other girl just because he didn't do it under the fricking tree. Usually having princess written across the rear of their pink sweatpants is a dead giveaway. In the 90s, it was a big trend to have princess written down one leg of the track pants. I made myself a pair in black with smack whore written down the side in red letters in the princess font. I'm starting to remember why my parents considered me to be such a huge disappointment. Lady who wrote that comment, thank you. This is a wonderful example of how to subvert a trend, and we're all better off for it. I once dated a girl who had a dad that bought her everything. He made a lot of money and was really great at saving it. His life's mission was to use that money to buy his B-word daughter's love. She was 22 and had her car paid for in full, insurance, phone bill, rent-free living, yada yada. For her birthday every year, she would get $1,000 in cash. I, on the other hand, was 23 at the time and paid for everything I owned. I had a crappier car than her because I paid for it myself. She would remind me often how much better her car was. I paid for all my other expenses and bills. Then, this insane thing happens. She gets a job at the bank I have all of my accounts at. She freaking looks up my bank account to see how much money I have. She tells me this and criticizes that I only have X amount in the bank when she has XXX in the bank and is so much better than me at saving money. I never once in our whole relationship brought up the money issue or how she didn't really work for what she had. This time, though, I lost my fricking mind. I mentioned everything that she had that she didn't pay for, and explained that if it wasn't for her daddy, she would be a boulder $20,000 in debt. This blow-up was the biggest fight I've had in any relationship. Our relationship ended there. I learned a valuable lesson here. Always date someone who has a similar work ethic and financial goals as yourself. I realized that I always resented her and could admit I was jealous of her getting handed money. That's not right, nor is it healthy. I'm happily married to a very hard-working woman who will help me raise a hard-working child. Oh, don't worry. They'll tell you they're a princess. Was seeing a girl for a few months and I gave her something on Valentine's Day that read, "Be my Valentine," or some other variation. She responded with, "That's sweet, but my daddy will always be my Valentine." She was in her second semester of law school and in her mid-20s, so that whole daddy is the best man in the world thing was off-putting. She ended up being high maintenance and unpredictable, bad combination. And of course, my most read story was about some daddy-obsessed girl I dated in the army. I'll let Jenna know that everyone else thinks it's strange too. I should mention that none of that unhealthy daddy attachment made its way into the bedroom. Thankfully, there was only one daddy in her life. I forgot to mention that she got married about a year ago and she did an entire album for her wedding shoot with her and her daddy. When she complains about her parents on the first date, going on about her lines of succession and how they're always forcing her to marry a prince from another fiefdom. And how she just wants the title, but never even cleaned up after herself and makes her nasty stepsister do it all because she's pretty much an orphan now. Stepson had a girlfriend who was teed off because he didn't buy her a 1-week anniversary gift. Run, dude, run. To elaborate, they are pretty young, early teens. She didn't get him anything. This girl was nuts, would call him over and over. If he didn't answer, she would text him 8 million times. Luckily, he has since moved with me, new school and different city altogether, which is good because they dated like 4 times over the year. She would break up with him and then want him back. Well, to be fair, they're young and probably receive a little more of the princess treatment from their parents. Let's just hope they grow out of it, or into it in a healthy way. Senior year of high school prom was coming up, and this one girl who I kinda knew asked my friend if he would go to prom with her. He said yes, but a few days later changed his mind, which was 100% a prick thing to do. She, however, really wanted someone to go to prom with, and the guy that turned her down, along with some of my other mutual friends, told me I should go with her, which sounded like a good idea because she was kind of cute and I was going alone at that point. A week or so later, a few of us were hanging out at Nifty 50s and they gave us those little paper hat things, and I wrote, "Prom?" on mine, and she said yes. Sick. On the way home from asking her out, she said to me, "How does it feel knowing that you're going to prom with the birthday princess?" First red flag. Upon further conversation, she told me that prom was going to be on her 18th birthday, and because of that, she was definitely going to get prom queen, which would most likely be the absolute last reason I'd want to get prom queen in her situation. Fast forward a week or so, I had just gotten home from school and I got a text from her asking if I wanted to go with her to pick out shoes for prom. I should tell you that halfway through my senior year, I moved to another school district 40-ish minutes away, and my date lived like 15 minutes on the other side of school. Not to mention that the car I drove was a gas-guzzling machine, and it was like $10 round trip when prices were high. I tried telling her that I had just gotten home, and that it would take me an hour or so to get there, and that I had work that I needed to get done. I also had zero interest in going, but that's beside the point. Reasonable excuse though. She lost it. She was saying all this stuff about how messed up it is that I wouldn't do this for her, and other random stuff that totally didn't make sense. Then she said, "I guess I'll just ask Anthony to go with me." Anthony was a close friend of mine who had off and on feelings for my date, and they were close friends. There was a reason he didn't ask her, but I can't remember. I told her to go ahead because that didn't bother me. I wasn't trying to date the girl. Hell, I wasn't even trying to get laid. I purely asked her out because she was dying to go to prom with someone, and I was single. Flash forward to day of prom. A few days before prom, she asked me if she should get a tan. I told her I really don't like that look, especially not awful spray tan. The day of prom, she showed up looking like a carrot and her hands looked like that of a black person. Her tan was bad. Uneven, blotchy, you name it. She was proud of it though, so who was I to tell her otherwise? She said, "How does the birthday princess look?" And I told her she looked beautiful. She told me at that time where to meet her and her friends who I was now taking, which was news to me, but I bit my tongue and went along with it. I get to her friend's house 5 minutes early, and she is 45 minutes late. When she finally arrives, she was wearing a tiara that read, "Birthday Princess." Her and her friend probably took 100 pics together, and me and the other dude, who I hated but by the end of the night found out he was actually pretty cool, just sat to the side waiting for our turn for the pics. I think we took 3 together. Now, when I tell people this part of the story, they get confused because apparently my school was weird. We had this thing called pre-prom, where basically we'd go up on stage in the auditorium, walked out with our date, get pictures taken, and get judged for prom king or queen. People do little cute things on stage in order to gain approval and to get more votes. Some funny, some cute, some just walked out like normal. What she made us do is she walks out on stage, first looking around. I creep up behind her with a huge happy birthday balloon, so everyone knew it was her birthday, tap her on the shoulder, and when she'd turn around, I'd be on one knee, put a sash on her that read, "Birthday Princess." It was cheesy, it was uncomfortable, I hated it. Prom time. So we get to prom and take our seat, we eat a little, and then people start going on the dance floor. I ask if she wants to dance, but she says she's not feeling well and I should just go. I obliged and danced for a good 20 minutes, and when I look at her sitting down, she looks very upset. I notice her staring at the boy who turned her down dancing with another girl, and I felt bad for her. I went up to her and told her to come to the floor and have fun with everyone, and she says she's fine. A half hour passes before I walk up to her. She looks me dead in the eyes, and before I can say anything, she snaps and says, "You really need to learn to leave me the hell alone." Well then. I leave her at the table and go and hang out with my friends. People keep coming up to me and asking where my date is, and then someone asks, "Why is she crying?" The question then turns to, "What did you do to her?" It got to the point where even teachers and school faculty pulled me over asking if I did anything to upset her. An hour passes and it's time to announce prom king and queen. I sat down again and she calmed down by this point. She was telling the whole table how she has to be prom queen because it's her birthday and she's the birthday princess. I told her not to get her hopes up just in case it didn't happen, and she didn't like that at all. She wasn't prom queen, she wasn't even nominated. She ran out of the room crying. After it was announced and people started dancing again, I went up to the aforementioned Anthony and told him if he wanted to dance with my date, he could. He told me he would feel bad and didn't want to do that to me, but I assured him it would be fine. I looked over a little later, noticed them slow dancing, and that was the happiest I'd been all night. I then went off to dance with some of the other girls who didn't have dates, and for once, prom was fun. Too bad it ended 20 minutes later. As everyone is gathering their things and clearing out, my date finds me again and says, "I feel like you're upset with me." I didn't say a word. She asked if we could go to Applebee's because it's her birthday and they love singing to her every year. First, I told her she wasn't special, they do that to everyone. That was a real slap in the face to her. Secondly, I told her by the time we got there, we would only have 15 minutes before it closed. She told me that as long as we order before it's closed, we can stay there. As someone who was working as a dishwasher at the time, I knew how much of a prick move that was. She said, "Please, but I'm the birthday princess." I refused. The drive home was one of the most uncomfortable car rides of my life. Every time we passed a restaurant, "Do you think Denny's would sing to me? Do you think the diner would sing to me? Do you think McDonald's would sing to me?" I have never met someone, yet alone an 18-year-old, who was so obsessed with their birthday. I pulled up to her other friend's house, a bunch of people were going here after prom to hang out, and we all got out. As I was walking up the driveway, I got the thought, what the hell am I doing? I walked back to my car and drove away. In conclusion, while she wanted to feel like a princess, I felt like 2017 Prince. Also, the day of prom at school, I asked my friend if he wanted to hang out after prom. He told me he wasn't going because he was going to ask out the girl I was going with and didn't want to go alone. Fast forward a few months. I hadn't spoken to the girl I went to prom with since I drove away. Literally not a word. It was the day of graduation, and my one friend was having a graduation party. I went, and lo and behold, my date was there. A group of us started talking, and out of nowhere she said, "You know, the way you asked me to prom was cool, but the way that blank, the kid who didn't end up going to prom because I was going with her, would have asked me would have been so much better." His plan was going to be to get Snow White at Disney to ask this girl to prom because she was obsessed with Snow White. Like, she cried on senior trip at Disney when she saw her because she was so overwhelmed with excitement. Maybe the first red flag should have been that she was obsessed with princesses. Blimey. Listen, I think most of us came out there feeling a little less bad about our various cringe prom dates, and let's be thankful for that. I declined to send a selfie and got a B-word fit on the first day of our texting as I skipped work to feverishly sleep through the flu. "Honestly, I don't know if I can trust you. If you won't do such a simple thing, what if you abandon me in my hour of need in the airport or hospital?" I can only groan so hard. My friend's sister calls herself a princess. First of all, she's really picky about food and never eats anything gross, like chicken legs or wings. She once shed a fricking forced tear when she learnt that the thing she was eating is chicken legs at the middle of the buffet. We were in a restaurant with my friend and she tags along. So when we asked her order, she just said that we should know her favorite foods since we have known her for so long. Not really. I just ordered her some burger meal and she threw a tantrum since she doesn't eat ketchup, and I should have known this. What the frick? We were in Burger King. She ended up clearing her whole meal straight to the floor and ordered salad. When she talks, she requires her boyfriend to pay her full attention. Looking away is not an option, or he would disrespect her. Goes for coffee with someone. "We should see a movie." "Sure thing. You're paying, right? I don't have any money." So I did. We walk past the snack bar and she goes and queues up. Slightly confused, I stand in line with her. She orders what she wants and then looks at me. I chuckle, place my ticket on the counter, and walk off and out of the cinema. Lawyers. What's the stupidest reason you've been asked to sue for? And what was the outcome? I saw photos of a horribly dead couple. They had a son who was an amateur race car driver, and they ignored a fence, several no trespassing signs, and security guards to go stand in a restricted area and film their son's race. A crash happened, they got destroyed, and the son then sued, saying that security shouldn't have physically restricted them from entering that area. I don't know how it ended. I hope it ended with the son getting slapped by the judge, jury, and lawyers. While going through lifeguard training, one of the workers told us a story about why we have to always get consent on children. A lifeguard that he knew had gotten a drowning child out of a pool and saved his life. The mother tried to sue the lifeguard for putting her child on the ground too hard. Luckily, the lifeguard won, but it made me a bit scared to be a lifeguard. I defended a guy who sold his house. He got sued by the buyers. The buyers were told by a neighbor that there was an underground storage tank on the property, and that it had leaked oil. The neighbor was convinced it was there. We went to trial a year later, and the buyer never could produce any evidence of an underground tank or contamination. The jury gave him $13,000 anyway. You're a crappy lawyer? He's either a crappy lawyer or a crappy liar. Either way, something smells about this story. Why the crap would the neighbor say crap like that? Well, I think we've all got a little soiled by these various puns, people. Let's move along, shall we? One of my friends had to defend a government agency from a seemingly serious lawsuit. The issue was about a kindergarten, this is Australia, so it's a preschool age, near a government work site. And the issue was some white trash B-words for kids have breathing issues from dangerous levels of dust. Anyway, my friend isn't high on the ladder, so a lot of the legwork fell to her. She had to go to the suspect site and found it to be a park undergoing massive landscaping. After convincing the bogan that the kids needed a medical examination if they want to pursue the case in a meeting, she notices the mother is a massive chain smoker. This basically led to her correctly guessing that the kids' breathing problems were caused by their mother smoking non-stop all day. Evidence to corroborate it includes the medical examination and 3 incidents where the fire department were called to the bogan's house for fires caused by smoking in bed. In conclusion, mother tries to sue for health issues of children, only to be found as leading cause of said health issues. My childhood friend almost got sued for shooting his friend with an airsoft gun. The pellet hit skin and made the kid go crying to his dad. His dad was some big-shot lawyer and had the kid arrested for being in possession of a firearm or weapon on his property. He later wanted to sue my friend's family to pay for his son's injuries. The injury was a red welt mark, nothing serious. The stupid part was that the lawyer's son invited them over to play with the airsoft guns in the first place. My aunt, Jane, has a medical condition. Without revealing too much, she is an adult but considered a minor because of her dependent status. When she gets sick, she needs to go to the hospital. One day she had an episode and the hospital didn't have enough expertise to handle her case. They said she needed to be taken to the capital city for treatment. Her immediate family were all out of the country, so my grand-aunt, her aunt, hired a service to take her to the capital for treatment. When Aunt Jane's siblings found out about what happened, they decided to sue my grand-aunt for kidnapping. According to them, my grand-aunt had kidnapped Aunt Jane and taken her to the hospital against her will. By the way, my grand-aunt actually got written permission from Aunt A's mother. Now, we live in a third world where bribes sway the hand of justice, so that trial actually lasted a few years. We won in the end, but I get really angry when I think about the lawyers who took their case. My dad, an old ridiculous man, tried to sue McDonald's because he tripped over those stumps in the parking lot. McDonald's. And to make it worse, they were actually really kind to him and got him a first aid kit. Wow, I think this is the first time I've been so ashamed to be related to him, and trust me, there have been a lot of times. Any case where someone's life is saved and they sue the person who saved them. That crap is messed up. That's the main reason why Good Samaritan laws exist. Otherwise, nobody would save anyone else's life due to fear of lawsuit. In some states, the Good Samaritan laws do not really provide much, if any, protection to a would-be rescuer. Good God, is this an American thing? Because that's absurd. I've never heard of anything like that happening over here. A middle-aged woman lost her footing in the parking lot of my significant other's work the other day. At first, she said she was fine, just scraped her knee, etc. But as soon as she sat down, she started coming up with a laundry list of imaginary injuries she had suffered. Oh, she hit her head. And oh, she's feeling nauseous and faint. Oh, and she has a bad hip and shoulder and back. She's in so much pain she can barely move. Significant other called 911 as is protocol. The EMT gave her a clean bill of health and said that there was nothing wrong with her. A skinned knee, sure, but that was it. She refused an offer to go to the hospital, saying she felt better now. Well, 10 minutes later, after the EMTs leave, she and her husband are out taking pictures in the parking lot. She's walking just fine, but guess who's probably going to sue? The sad part is they're going to get a settlement even though it's total BS. It's not worth the time and trouble to let the case go to court, so the lawyers will just throw a few $1,000s her way to get her to go away. Apparently this happens pretty often. People know they'll get paid off, so they turn on the waterworks over even the tiniest injury or slight. Friend had a paternity or child support case walk through his door that was mind-blowing. Couple A and Couple B go out for a night on the town. They're drinking and riding around in a car and decide to get frisky. Only problem? They only have one condom between them. So, being the bright young minds they are, they decide to share the condom. Couple A uses condom first, passes it back to Couple B. Dude in Couple B turns the condom inside out and uses it. Girl in Couple B becomes pregnant with dude from Couple A's kid. Welcome to the South. You can't make this crap up. Dude, Guy B was a frickin' moron for turning the condom inside out. What he should have done was worn it normal, then sued Guy A for making him gay when Guy A's splooge touched his junk. I'm from the South too. I'm not a lawyer, but when I was a kid, our neighbor decided to sue us over 4 inches of land. So on that side of the house, we had a wooden catwalk that led into our backyard. It was in poor condition when we bought the house, so a few years later, my parents decided to hire some contractors to repair it. Within a week of them finishing it, my parents got a letter from a lawyer, which stated that our neighbor was suing them for infringing on his property with this new catwalk. A surveyor was hired and a 3 to 4 year legal battle ensued. The end result? Yes, the catwalk was 4 inches over the property line. However, the old catwalk had been rotting and sloping on that side before the work, so it was probably more than 4 inches over before. My parents had to pay to bring in a new crew and rectify that problem. He built a fence on his front lawn right along the property line, all the way down the road. His wife vanished. We suspect that she left him for being a crazy butthole, and his kids stopped visiting. He moved out about a year after winning the court case. Oh, I almost forgot the best part of the story. He finally decided to settle. He changed the terms of what he wanted to something agreeable because, and I crap you not, the spirits told him it was time. I almost feel bad for the guy because he clearly has some sort of dementia, but he made my parents' lives a living hell for 3 or 4 years. One time when I was 17, I was backing out of my driveway to go to school. There was almost no traffic then because it was before the average Joe left for work in the morning. I checked to see if it was clear, and it appeared that it was. Someone thought that would be a great time to park behind me on the other side of the small road so they could let their kid wait for the bus stop. I just happened to be looking around my opposite shoulder, so I dinged the side of their bumper. They were driving an SUV, didn't want to get insurance involved, and didn't seem to be annoyed, etc. I know, I was a dumb teenager and my dad told me it'd just be cheaper to pay for the damages out of pocket rather than be an unsafe driver for the next 40 years. I ended up paying them like $500 or something since the damage was simply cosmetic. It seemed high in my mind, but that was because I wasn't used to how high car parts can go, like thousands of dollars for a molded plastic kind of thing. Fast forward a few weeks, I'm served with papers to a lawsuit. Apparently the driver and kid are claiming medical damages and many thousands of dollars of damage to their vehicle, including replacing most of the front end. They were asking $500,000 or something. My insurance company said that since I didn't report it, there probably wasn't much they could do, but they'd check. A week after that, an insurance company agent asks me to come in and talk with him, which I do. I'm completely straight with them. They aren't annoyed at all, they just want to get my side of the story and show me the proof the other people had that this story was as they say. First, they had an invoice from a garage that was nearly unreadable. Each line item was for multiple thousands of dollars. Among them, some of the ones we could read were things like replaced engine and repaired/welded frame. Second, the kid had some kind of surgery done between the accident and the lawsuit, which they claim was the direct result of said accident. What was it? The kid developed appendicitis a week or 2 later. Third, the driver was undergoing treatment at a chiropractor and had a note from them saying they would never be able to lift heavy objects or stand for more than a few minutes at a time, and would probably be in severe pain due to pinched nerves and slipped discs caused by the accident. So I'm sitting there with all these images of being in debt forever running through my head, and the insurance agent is kind of giggling at those things. I was kind of shocked, but they walked me through why each piece of their proof was just an attempt to look serious enough to get a settlement deal on the table. Sure enough, they were suing for $500,000, but willing to settle for $100,000 because the family was so exhausted in dealing with the accident. The insurance company had someone inspect my car, and they were able to say without hesitation that the car had not been through an accident like the kind the people were claiming. They wanted to examine their vehicle too, but apparently said vehicle had been given to relatives out of state, because it brought back such bad memories. Also, on a hunch, they looked at the background of the people involved. What do you know? It turns out they just got a big settlement for another serious car accident in another state. A little more digging was done and the police were notified. I don't know if they ever went to jail for it, but apparently their proof was fake. The kid did get his appendix removed, but their freaking health insurance paid for that. My dad is a lawyer, so I have a couple of these. My dad was once asked to represent a man who tripped on the sidewalk due to a tree. He said he walked that sidewalk every day. The time he walked it and tripped, apparently a tree jumped out in front of his path and tripped him. Second one is a little weirder. A woman called my dad for legal advice because there was a spider in her baby's diaper package. When asked, she said she put that diaper with the spider in it on her baby. She wanted to sue Pampers. My dad hung up on her there. I saved the best for last. My dad represented a taxi driver for when he got into a car crash. Everything went like a normal case. My dad won the case for the driver very quickly. As he was with the guy for payment, he found out that the taxi driver was blind. You heard that right, he was 80% blind in both eyes. No one found out except my dad, not the taxi driver's clients, not the jury, not the judge, not even the DMV. He walked out of my dad's office with one of those tapping sticks and drove home. I mean, that last story isn't so much stupid as outright ridiculous, and for a completely different reason than the others. My goodness. Not a lawyer, but I'm a client manager at a law firm. I once had a man call in trying to sue the local Popeyes because they gave him a large order of wings instead of a small order of thighs. He had witnesses to prove it and everything. So basically, you're the last line of defense between the lawyers and the insanity of the real world. Lady calls 911 and says the dump truck in front of her is spilling gravel all over the road and her truck. I ask her if any damage is done to her vehicle and she says she doesn't know. Officers find the dump truck, follow it about a mile and don't observe any gravel spilling out. They pull it over anyway to get driver, company, insurance information, assuming she wants to make a damage to property report. I ask the lady to stop with the officers or bring her vehicle to the police department so they can see the damage and do the report for her insurance company. She tells me she doesn't have time because her daughter is late for a singing lesson. 2 weeks later, after a hailstorm, she came to the PD to make a report for the damage, but she is driving another vehicle. She claims her truck is already at the repair shop and the estimate is $3,000. Officer tells her he can't make a report for damage without seeing the vehicle, but he goes ahead and makes an information-only report to appease her. Now she's trying to sue the PD because the officers won't testify that the dump truck is the cause of the damage. Kind of like, I'm going to sue you unless you perjure yourself. Good lord. Guy sued the creators of Budweiser because he suffered emotional distress, mental injury, and financial loss because he didn't nail beautiful women like the adverts promised, thus causing him to consume more and more. The judge basically told him to take it like a man like the rest of us borderline alcoholics do. My friend had a client who wanted to sue his parents for emotional abuse. That abuse consisted of giving the client a name he didn't like. It's not even as if the name was one of those ridiculous ones. It was a perfectly ordinary one, if a little uncommon in our country. Needless to say, my friend didn't agree to represent the guy. My fire tech teacher has a great story he told me of. He worked with the fire department, and they're called in to a car accident. The first car is smashed in, and they get the jaws of life. Open it up, one man survived, and his 9-month pregnant wife was decapitated. Another firefighter proceeded to do an emergency C-section and save the man's baby. Well, after finding out he was out of scope for doing so, the man sued the firefighter. He sued him for saving his only child. For those who asked, the guy won the lawsuit. The firefighter lost his license, uncertain if he was jailed, and yeah, so he lost. Worked in law firms for 10+ years. Heard a great story where a guy comes in with his wife and teen daughter to discuss defense against a claim that the dad fiddles the daughter. The guy basically says, "It's my daughter, I can do what I want with her." The mum says nothing. The lawyer was disbarred for vaulting the table and punching the dad. My sister was sued by this elderly woman. It was her senior year of high school toward the end of the year. She's leaving school and takes a right onto the road. Her and the elderly woman got into a car accident and the police officer found my sister at fault. Within a year later, my parents learn that the old lady is suing them for doctor appointments and such. When it comes to the case, we find that the elderly woman had been taking prescription pills that affect motor skills. Worst case, the pills were in the daughter's name, not hers. Not only that, but the old lady had been speeding in a 35-mile-per-hour school zone. She actually admitted to it. Parents didn't have to pay a dime to the old broad. Not a lawyer, but I did get sued once. For child support. My deadbeat dad ex-husband called after 5 years of no contact and no financial support. He's dying. Kids see him. The younger one wants to stay with him for a while. She stays with him and his new wife and daughter. They live in the same town. He miraculously gets better. 4 months in, I get a letter from his lawyer for child support. Says I'm a deadbeat mum, he's had her for years without any support from me. I walk into the remediation meeting with school and medical records, divorce and support papers, history of his non-payment through the state, and of course, proof of his other daughter who still lived with me. Apparently he forgot to tell his lawyers a few things. Younger daughter is dumped back on my doorstep the next day, and I never hear from his lawyer again. That was over 20 years ago, and he's still alive. A lady tried suing a train company because her husband was killed by one of their trains. Sounds responsible? No. Her husband came to a stop at the crossing, then decided to drive his truck through the barrier and was hit by the train. In the process, parts of this man went flying into Kingdom Come and landed on some lady's windshield. She sued the man's family for damages and because it traumatized her. Oh my gosh. As ridiculous as the first lawsuit in the story is, I can't help but think that suing the man's family for having the nerve to die in a traumatic way and leave his wife alone isn't the most humane course of action. In fact, it may be why the first lady sued in the first place, to maybe recoup some of the losses. I could go on all day, but I'll limit it to the most egregious two. I'm a retired public defender. Before I started with the PD's office, I worked briefly for a private firm where I encountered these two cases. 1. A single-parent mum had to fly out of town for training for her job. Deadbeat dad wasn't paying child support because he claimed he couldn't find a job. This will be important later. Mum left her 4-year-old daughter with her sister, the child's aunt. While mum's away, the aunt takes the girl to Chuck E. Cheese. A repairman at Chuck E. Cheese opens an access panel to repair the pulleys that operated the giant puppets. Repairman goes in back to get a tool and leaves the access panel open. The girl puts her hand in the opening and her fingers are severed. She is rushed to the ER and the docs want a parent. With mum out of town, deadbeat dad is called in. After consulting with the docs and the girl in the OR, deadbeat dad calls the law firm from the waiting room and wants to know if he has a case. He wants to include lost wages as part of his damages. I left for public defender soon after and I don't know how the case ever resolved. 2. A 28-year-old man marries a 16-year-old girl, much to the dismay of her parents. In this state, a 16-year-old can marry without parental consent if she is pregnant, which she was. He proves to be a chronically unemployed and abusive husband. The mother-in-law convinces the girl to take the baby and come home. With her gone, husband of the year goes out and finds a high school girl. The wife changes her mind and returns to her husband with the baby. Months later, husband is served in a paternity suit from the high school girl he was with during the wife's absence. He makes an appointment with me and wants to know if I can force the mother-in-law to pay the child support to high school girl, since it was the mother-in-law's fault that the wife wasn't there for him to have fun times with, therefore forcing him to seek out high school girl. We didn't take the case. Fairly unrelated to the question, but I rarely get to tell this story. I was picking up an old lady, 80-ish, for church one Sunday morning because my parents had asked me to. I was like 17 at the time. The lady doesn't live too far from the church, so I say sure, why not, and proceed to pick her up from her house. I pick her up and take her to church, no problem. I sleep through the service and take her back because that's just what you do for people you give rides to a place. When I got there, she slipped out of my car, Explorer, and fell to the ground and she started wailing that something was broken. So I get an ambulance over there and of course it's her hip. No big deal, happens all the time to old people. They patch her up and I think replace her hip because it was like number 3 for her. And so a few weeks later, I found out that the lady is suing me for her falling out of my car. What the hell? So I bring it up to my insurance company and they actually settled with her for an extraordinary amount of money. $200,000, I believe. What? How is this even a thing? Anyone? $200,000 was probably the cost of her medical bills and she had to sue you to get your auto insurance to cover it. Her health insurance may have refused to pay, and this could have been her only option. The same thing happens when someone injures themselves in your home and can't afford the medical bills. They sue you to get your homeowners/renters insurance to cover it. I'm sure my lawyer thinks it's a bit ridiculous a girl physically attacked me over a $1 burrito while she was blackout drunk and is now trying to press assault and battery against me when all I did was shove her back a few times in self-defense. What's your homeowners association horror story? Well, here it goes. It's not my story, but my dad's. When I was real little, my parents owned a house in Florida that was part of a homeowners association. Behind the house was a lagoon or pond or whatever, and the backyard went right up to it. Basically, the backyard ended at a little slope that went right down into the water. One day, my parents got a notification from the HOA that the grass in the back was unkempt and this was a violation and there would be a fine if he didn't cut it. What they meant was the grass on the slope into the pond needed to be cut, even though that wasn't a part of the property. My dad said whatever, broke out the lawnmower and got to work. Just as he was finishing up, a huge frickin' alligator comes rushing up out of the water. My dad does the only logical thing. He lets go of the lawnmower and runs. The mower runs down the slope, hits the alligator, most likely teeing it off, and sinks halfway into the water. My dad leaves it there because he ain't gonna mess with no scaly death machine. A week or so later, another notice arrives, this time about yard tools being left out, the mower in the pond surrounded by agitated miniature water dragons. And yes, there was a fine. Dad said, screw 'em, and refused to pay a fine or any HOA dues ever again. They added monthly fines for non-payment. Made a point of specifically never paying the HOA every month when he gave the mortgage to the bank. The bank didn't care since they got their money. Who cares about some crappy board? About a year later, when my parents sold the house, the HOA came to collect. Guess what my dad said? That's right, he said, F off. Take my payment out of the lawnmower, if the gator lets you. Then they drove off into the sunset. As far as we know, the lawnmower is still there in the water, guarded by scary dinosaurs. I had just moved into my house a few months prior when I got a letter threatening to be fined $200, stating that my mailbox wasn't black. I thought surely they had the wrong house because my mailbox was in fact black. So I contacted them and they gave a runaround arguing that it wasn't. I told them to come and look and of course they said it was on me to prove to them it was black. So I snapped a photo and emailed it to them. I hear nothing back for well over a month, then get another letter giving me a courtesy week extension before I'm fined. I'm livid at this point, so contact the HOA again asking for an explanation as to what exactly the problem is. I'm finally told that neighbors felt my mailbox was rather worn and needed to be painted or replaced. So basically, it wasn't black enough for them. So I fricking painted it. Now for the part that set me over the edge. After a few months or so, I learned the fricking HOA will replace a mailbox as it's covered under our terms. So I called them asking about why they threatened to fine me when they were the ones that should replace it if not to standard. They stated it was because they had no open work orders for my mailbox and that it was my responsibility to notify them if it needed maintenance, not theirs. If you fancy being really petty, every week send a request saying that your mailbox is in need of repair. I'm no stranger to these sorts of stories from petty, bored bureaucrats, but do they retire and resolve to do the same thing on HOAs? Because supposedly these associations are run by people weirdly passionate about the neighborhood. This just seems intentionally negligent and crappy. This is actually something that is an ongoing battle between my friend's mum and her HOA, or more specifically, one member. She lives inside this circular complex full of townhouses with a roundabout in the center that used to have a lot of trees and looked really nice, almost like a mini park. The HOA decided to cut down all of the trees without giving notice, and my friend's mum was annoyed. She went to complain about it and they basically said, "Sorry, too late." In protest of them doing that, she decided to buy this big inflatable palm tree that she stuck on her balcony for all to see. Decided to file a complaint because it looked gaudy. She knew exactly who it was, and it upset her more that this person did that instead of coming to talk to her after years of living near each other. She was able to keep her tree, and when Christmas came around, she even decorated it. She decided she was going to wage this war against the HOA and this neighbor by having annoying inflatable decorations on her balcony. When it started warming up, she bought a flamingo, which she likes to dress in Chicago Cubs or Blackhawks gear, depending on the season. I told my friend he should get her a 6-foot wacky waving inflatable tube man to put on there next, which I think would be hilarious, but I don't know if she wants to take it that far. They towed my car from my driveway. Yes, my driveway. Tags were legit. This was an HOA that had a limited allotment of parking spaces that were nowhere near the actual homes. The homes themselves had mini driveways. So after a really long day, there were no parking spaces available, so I temporarily parked in the driveway. Went in the house, came back out 30 minutes later to try to find a parking spot. Walked outside and thought my car got stolen. Nope, butthole neighbor, probably, plus towing company, plus California. Triple screwed. When we first moved in, I asked the neighbor across the town how serious the HOA was here. He said bad. Then told me a story where he got a notice with a photo of his recycle bin being left in the street for too long. The photo was of him walking the recycling bin back to his garage. Lol. I had the HOA come out to approve a fence I was going to install. The lady at the HOA office was very nice and said my plans were within the covenant bylaws, etc. We just needed to have the inspector check it out himself to sign off. When he gets to my house, he says he doesn't understand what I wanted to do. I explained the type of fence I wanted to install, and he said that wasn't, from his knowledge, allowed. I walked him out to the street and pointed 2 houses down and say, "That house right there has the fence I want to install." He scoffs at this, walks down to look, and sure enough, it was exactly as I described it. He tells me, "Well, we don't like to have a bunch of different types of fences in this neighborhood." I reply, "I don't care what you prefer. The covenant says I can have that fence, and that's what I'm going to install because it's within the specifications of the covenant." Old fella didn't have much to say after that. I got a letter the next week with "approved for fence install." What is the universal deal with all these people? Are they just all that bored that they exclusively live for the small moments of competition in their life? Who does this? October 2016, my condo started to collapse. We were forced to leave and officially homeless for a year, with a card from the Red Cross and everything. The HOA did nothing. No one would admit to anything, explain anything, or contact us at all. For a year we waited, when we were finally told the building was structurally sound again, only to be told a week ago that we have to get out and get everything we own out for a month while they do repairs. Sometime this spring. Worst of all, we were required to keep paying our HOA fees through the entire thing. The only way owners were offered non-payment was if we signed a document promising not to sue anyone. Never again with a condo. Never again with an HOA, and never again with River Towers in Alexandria, Virginia. My ex's boyfriend's father was part of the homeowners board for their townhouse community. His wife would walk their dog around the entire neighborhood every day and carry a notebook to write infractions to report back to her husband. Ridiculous stuff. Neighbors have a window AC unit? Reported and fined. Have a garden that's a square foot too big? Reported and fined. Some people have absolutely no lives. Not my story, but my dad's. He moved into a new townhouse in summer of 2013. It was a foreclosure property, as the previous tenants were kicked out for not paying their mortgage and for not paying their HOA dues. They gave everyone in the HOA new patios and decks the summer prior. It was required and you had to get a new deck/patio. But the tenants had to pay for them in monthly installments in the next 3 years along with their HOA dues. As I said, the previous tenants foreclosed on their home. However, there was one rule placed when they got the decks, which was that you couldn't move out without paying off your deck first. He was told by the HOA that he would not have to pay off the deck because it was foreclosed and he was not responsible at all for paying it off. Sweet, free deck. He signed off on that. He moved in, but then he started getting assessments from the HOA for the deck. But wait, he wasn't supposed to be paying for the deck. He fought with the board. Even with the signed thing saying we didn't have to pay for the deck, the board went against him. He ended up having to pay off the remaining balance on the deck. To this day, he refuses to speak about this topic. It's a trigger for him. Most recent one was this year. They sent a letter saying no Christmas decorations until the 1st of December, and they all had to come down before the 3rd of January. They also sent a whole list of forbidden ornaments, including anything inflated or not in keeping with the spirit of the season. So basically all the light-hearted, funny ornaments. Look out the windows, kids. It's the Grinch's sad fricking cave. Anyway, we had beautiful weather on Black Friday, but had to wait until things got cold again before we could get out there and put up lights. Then, after New Year's Day, we had exactly 1 day to take down all our lights, and the wind chill was -25. Naturally, we decided, screw that, there's no way they will bill anyone for this, and opted to just leave the lights unplugged. We got a bill before 10 a.m. on the 3rd. Not a homeowners association, but a neighborhood association, so close enough. 2 quick stories about the same folks. A friend of mine who had a diseased, rotting, falling over tree in his front yard had to request the association's approval to have the tree removed. His request was initially denied and stalled for several weeks because the association wanted professional verification that the tree wasn't actually diseased. A cursory glance at a tree that was practically horizontal in the guy's yard wasn't enough, apparently. The church I'm a member of owns a house next door to the church. The house has some historical significance and is architecturally interesting, but at this point it's been totally abandoned for years. The family who built the house no longer has any interest in it, they sold it to the church and have no relatives in the city anymore. Because of the architecture and the length of the abandonment, doing anything productive with the house is likely a $1 million plus project. But the association has flatly refused to approve any non-reno plans and simultaneously has refused any notion at all to tear the house down. So the church is stuck with a house that is in increasingly bad shape, totally empty, can't be sold because of its condition, and the neighborhood association will not approve any plan to do anything with the house except leave it alone. I'll amend my earlier statements. These people aren't just bored and looking for a fight. They are all these things and also dedicated to avoiding all the actual duties they should be fulfilling in approving helpful work. For a man who has nothing to do with these bodies, they sure get me angry. Not a horror story yet, but it could be. When we moved in, someone stopped by to say hi, but more like to tell us our boat can't be parked on our lot. My wife told her, "Well, we read all the rules and it doesn't say that." She replied, "Well, I wrote the rules, so I should know." My wife told her to go read them again. Don't hear anything for months. When we get our annual dues packet, there is a newsletter saying our lot is in violation and that we stated plans to modify our garage to fit the boat in the spring. We never said that. They suggested setting a deadline for us and setting a vote to add boats to the list they already had. Campers, fifth wheels, motorhomes, and travel trailers. Bought the house intending to build a detached garage, but in order to comply with the design rules, it would cost me $90,000. So I'm waiting till I get an official anything in the mail, then I'll get a storage unit. By the way, my neighbor has been here 6 months longer than us and they have a boat in their driveway too. They sent us a series of nasty notices to remove the dead tree in our front yard. The tree had lost all of its leaves and it was unsightly, apparently. The catch is that they sent us this notice in November. You know, like fall, when perfectly healthy trees lose their leaves. We pretended we didn't understand which tree they were talking about until spring, when the tree magically came back to life. "We're also going to fine you for leaving all that strange white stuff in your yard in the winter." Mine involves kids, cops, assault, a sex scandal, and the elderly. My very first place in college that I didn't rent was a townhouse condo. Typical cookie-cutter, 3-storied, 4 to a section, little cutout of suburbia for beginners. I lived near the back of the development. This meant driving by or past the front units every day to get to and from work and school. Our HOA board president, Sonia, lived across the street from our HOA treasurer, Zelda. Sonia was in her 30s, ran an illegal daycare out of her home, and I hated driving by her house after 3 p.m. or on weekends because her 2 elementary-aged kids would hide behind parked cars and run in front of your vehicle, screaming, "Slow down!" I got really scared after this happened a few times and only drove 5 miles per hour through there, and the little crapheads kept doing it. I spoke with their mum about how unsafe jumping in front of cars was. I'm only going 5 miles per hour because I'm terrified and they're basically harassing me and our neighbors weekly. Sonia says her kids are being neighborhood monitors and I should be thankful for their diligence. WTF. A week later at 7 p.m., after most of the residents are home, mostly young families, I pull in after working my retail job after class. I notice a tow truck. Then 2, then 3. Holy fricking crap. They're towing everyone in the neighborhood. I park in my garage and run upstairs and tell my roommates to move their cars from the street parking. They run out and sure as crap, everyone who parked on the street is getting towed. There's 2 of my neighbors fighting with the tow drivers that they've always parked there. It's a parking area, it's in our homeowner's booklet. We whip it out and the tow truck drivers say they're just following orders of Sonia and they leave when the police show up. Sonia put up home-printed paper signs and signed a contract with the tow company in the middle of the day without telling anyone. The cops advised all residents that tomorrow this would be effective, but that the homemade signs Sonia made were not legal and there was no posted "no parking" signs. Guys, that night she was out in the street with a red bucket of paint, painting the curb red. She had the tow company post their tow signs and no parking signs the next afternoon. Goodbye street parking. Now anyone who didn't fit in the garage had to park 3 blocks away outside the condo units. The next straw was when one day 4 large evergreen trees were cut down from a communal park in the development. Old lady and treasurer Zelda found out Sonia had paid her sideman, who was also an arborist, over $8,000 of HOA money to cut these trees down, without any discussion or approval from the HOA board. Zelda flipped out, and the next HOA meeting let everyone know what happened to the trees and how Sonia screwed our HOA money away. We were planning for a community co-op garden. After the 6 o'clock meeting, I guess someone else on the board called Sonia to let her know that she was going to be removed from the HOA president seat due to the unapproved expenses, towing issue, and more. Well, at about 8 p.m., I hear screaming. Like blood-curdling screams from a woman. Help! Call the police! People, it's Zelda. She's outside her condo, fricking screaming. Sonia came over, punched the 70-year-old Zelda in the face, pulled her out of her own home, locked her out, and was now threatening to harm Zelda's disabled and bedridden elderly husband, who was upstairs. Zelda's fricking hysterical. I'm on the phone with the police, and about 5 neighbors are also outside on the phone with the police. Zelda's screaming every curse word in the book through her own front door at our crazy ex-HOA president. Sonia was arrested that night for crazy crap like assault and holding someone hostage. Since Sonia was a single parent, her kids were taken away by relatives about an hour after CPS showed up. Zelda had this gnarly black eye and huge scratches on her chest, where I guess Sonia clawed through her shirt and pulled her into the haymaker. I only lived there 14 months and moved due to the escalating issues with the HOA. Wait, so things continued to escalate after this? What happened? Were the members threatening to nuke each other? When I was a kid, I lived in one of the 2 front rooms of the house, which were the hottest in the summer and the coldest in the winter. My dad didn't like to use the AC, so we all just had fans. One summer, it got so unbearably hot in my room that fans just weren't cutting it, and I was miserable. My dad then put an AC unit in my window, and it was awesome. But it was short-lived because the HOA told us to take it down because it was an eyesore. My parents told them it was for their child, but they didn't care, so my parents had to take it down. The kicker is that just down the street, a guy who had the exact same model house as us had an AC unit installed in the exact same window as the one we had it in, and the HOA never said a word to him. Didn't happen to me personally, but I guess I can tell you about my parents' experience with their HOA. Dad retired and decided that he really wanted to buy a camper and travel. Mum was all about it, both of them very excited. So Dad runs off and trades his F-150 truck for an F-250 with a big diesel V8, buys a gooseneck camper and waits for spring. Camper in the backyard, truck in the garage, no big deal. Not long after, he gets a visit from a lady. She's got a list of rules from the HOA that was established long after my parents had built their house, something like 15 years later when the subdivision really took off, saying that Dad couldn't have the camper on his property because it was an eyesore. Mind you, this camper is in the backyard between a 6-foot privacy fence. You could still see it, sure, but it's not like it was old and in disrepair either. So here's my retired parents living in a subdivision that has an HOA that was established long after they built their home, and the HOA is expecting them to abide by rules they didn't agree to. He never moved the camper. Not mine, but one of my good friends has a rather insane HOA. They actually used rented surveying equipment to determine that his clothesline was 1 inch taller than his fence, and fined him several $100s for some stupid structure beyond the fence rule they had. Same HOA had someone walking around actually measuring the length of the grass with a ruler and issuing warnings for mowing. We live in an HOA neighborhood and had a neighbor trying to sell his house a few years ago. I kept my trash cans by my garage. They aren't ratty looking or stinky, they looked brand new, and noticed when I'd come home, they were gone. After looking, I find them behind my fence in my lawn. This happened 3 times in a week, so after that I got annoyed and thought someone was screwing with me. I go to the hardware store and got the largest chain and padlock I could find and start chaining them to the post on my front porch. My neighbor is outside and I say, "Hey Craig, you wouldn't happen to know what keeps happening to my trash cans?" Apparently he scoured the HOA rulebook and found out they are required to be out of sight except on trash day. He thought my trash cans being visible is why he was having a hard time selling his insanely overpriced house in a crap market and was moving them himself. Never talked to me, never got a notice from the HOA. I yelled at him for a while and told him he's a fricking child and he should know better than to repeatedly come onto my property and screw with my stuff without my knowledge at over 40 years old. Trash cans or not, it's my stuff, my property, land, fence, and lawn. Everyone in our neighborhood receives fines for leaving garage cans at the road. It was trash day. But you didn't put it out 90 seconds before the truck arrived and remove it 13.6 seconds after. Shame on you. Well, if you're as aggravated as I am, let's end on the high note of the story of triumph over the formation of one of these monstrous organizations. So it was a new community and my family just bought a house. So once all the other houses got built, this lady says she's going to start the HOA as per our agreement in the contract. So they call for a block party, no one shows up. A month later, another gathering at their home. No one shows up. 6 months pass by, call for a meet and greet at the community mailboxes. No one shows up. 2 months later, we get a letter asking for dues. Us and our neighbors next door and across the street talk about no one paying, and we spread the word to our 30 other neighbors, and the HOA died. Haven't heard from them in a few years. When did doing the right thing horribly backfire? I was in an extremely weird and once-in-a-lifetime kind of car accident, where I was supposed to be not at fault. I really don't want to go into detail, but another car hit me going twice the speed limit, sending both of us rolling down into a ditch. I got out through the windshield since it was shattered and was able to cut the airbag. The other car was in much worse shape and was on fire. I ran up to see if the driver was okay, but she was falling in and out of consciousness. Her car was upside down and roof was caving in, pressing her into her seat. The seatbelt was tight around her and her airbag wasn't deflating. I struggled with the door and was able to get her out as the fire spread to her. I remember passing out a little after I was able to put out the fire on her legs. Woke up in the ambulance, broken leg and concussion. EMTs said I was only able to save her from all the adrenaline coursing through my system. The police that wrote the report found her at fault and said I was a hero, but no good deed goes unpunished. She had first-degree burns on her legs and face and had super cheap-ass insurance. She ended up suing me and dragging me into a 4-year legal process that not only cost my insurance thousands, but had me spending money on legal fees and lost wages from constantly having to go to court. It was finally settled because somehow all she needed to prove was that I was at least 1% at fault and my insurance folded. She was awarded my full liability, $200,000, plus $25,000 that I'm on the hook for personally. I was able to get my car paid off and whatever was left in my pocket for a new car had to go to her. It's been 6 years since the accident and I still owe about $12,000, but I'm trying to avoid paying that. The last time I talked to my attorney after she was awarded damages, he said something that I'll always think back on and wish I could have changed my actions. He said if he was in my shoes and knew the outcome, he would have left her there to burn. At least you know when you're in a situation where you have no time to think, just react, you do the right thing and fight for the stranger's life. People like you reinvigorate my goodwill towards others. Sure, it ended poorly, but no matter how cynical that woman's actions may make us, you are the saving grace that keeps us inspired and willing to bear ourselves. What? I literally cannot comprehend why so many stories on this thread involve people suing their saviors. Human greed knows no bounds. It makes me want to live alone in the wilderness. In one of my previous scripts on lawsuits, there is a trend of this happening in America. Sadly, it seems that when people do get into life-altering situations, the only way they can recoup their losses is by suing anyone they can who was even tangentially involved. It's awful, but it's true for that country. I was in the parking lot of a store one time when a lady dropped a bunch of stuff off her cart. She was having trouble picking up the box of bulk items. I told her that I would help her and we both picked the box up and put it in the trunk of her car. She then sprayed me with pepper spray and screamed. I was left confused as to why I was attacked as she almost ran me over driving out of there. I was at a club and saw my friend's girlfriend sitting in a booth, not looking so great. I decided to go over to help her. I told my friend he should probably take her home and helped her to start walking outside. She then threw up all over my sports jacket. At that point, I had vomit all over me and the bouncer wanted her gone ASAP, so I had to leave the club in a hurry. In all the excitement, I forgot that I had left my tab open, which at this club required both your driver's license and credit card. By the time I realized this, I was 25 miles away, with no hope of going back. I called another of my friends who was still there to close it for me. He called back to say that they didn't have my ID or credit card, but that the bartender had given him someone else's ID instead. He was pretty drunk, so I wasn't sure what was going on. I later called the club about 20 times and went back there, but no ID or credit card. I saw a woman litter right next to a trash can and I was walking behind her. As I thought I was out of her peripherals, I picked up the trash and threw it away. She apparently saw me and for some unknown reason became belligerent as if I had just insulted her. She then proceeded to try and hand me more trash whilst exclaiming fairly irately that if litter bothered me so much I should throw it all away. One of the weirdest encounters in my life. So here is my story. It was Christmas Eve night a few years back in Kansas City, Missouri. There was a considerable snowfall and the city was having one of our worst winters in years. I was leaving my girl's house around 11 p.m., who lived about 8 minutes away from where I stayed. Normally, this would be a quick zip down Blue Park and I would be home, but there was already about 2.5 inches of snow, and my car was a beater, but I was managing. As I'm heading down the road, I see a guy and his kid, I crap you not, without a coat, standing in front of a car in a liquor store parking lot. Now, I could give two craps, honestly. If an adult got himself in trouble normally, I would keep going. But I honestly felt bad for the kid, and he had to be cold with no coat and all. So anyhow, I pull up and ask him if he needs a jump. "Nah, dog, I got a bad starter. It screws up when it's cold," the man replies. After I figure out it's nothing I can help with, I ask if he would like me to call someone. "Nah, homie, but if you could give me a ride to my house, that'd be cool as hell." His street was about 3 streets back down the road, so I figure no big deal. Him and his kid huddle in the car. At this point, I notice the man reeks of marijuana and is probably high. Now, the important thing to remember in this story is that the main street I was on was an emergency snow route, meaning it had been pre-treated and the plows had already run through it. This, of course, makes the snow at the entrances to side streets higher and a bit more packed, a fact I hadn't really considered until I turned into his street and I got my front 2 tires stuck completely in snow. When it was clear I was stuck and couldn't go forwards or backwards, the man said, "Ah, crap, my bad, man. My house is pretty close from here. Good looking out, though," and then proceeded to get out of my car and walk to his front door. A front door I could see from my car that was stuck. He did not offer to help me get my car unstuck, not that we could with the 2 of us, nor did he offer to let me come in and wait for a tow truck. I ended up spending Christmas morning that year hanging out at a 7-Eleven for about 6.5 hours waiting on a tow truck. A friend of mine was walking down the street late at night when he saw a man lying in an alleyway. The guy looked as though he'd been hurt really bad and was asking for help. My friend approached him to find out how badly he had been hurt and what he needed to do. When he did, a bunch of guys ambushed him, beat the crap out of him, and stole all his money. The whole thing had been a setup just to lure him into a vulnerable situation. It's freaking terrible to take advantage of someone else's kindness like that. I read a story of a man driving in the middle of the night on a street surrounded by cornfields when he saw a man laying in the street ahead, not moving. He contemplated helping, but ultimately decided he should find help ahead to play it safe. He carefully drove around the body and slowly drove off, and when he looked in his rear mirror, he saw the body stand up and slink away into the cornfields. Most likely, there was an ambush waiting. It's truly sad that the moral of a lot of these seems to be, don't help people who look like they're in need. I would hope that we can refine it to assess the situation, but I guess we know that isn't always possible in the heat of the moment. Gave a one-eyed homeless guy $5. He wandered off, apparently telling other homeless guys his good fortune. Homeless guys began melting out of the scenery, asking for their $5. I realized my mistake at that point and stopped being generous. They apparently turned their anger on One Eye and stabbed him for his $5. I found out when questioned by police. Reminds me of an incident in high school. We used to drive down to a liquor store in Newark, New Jersey, to buy beer. There was always a crowd of homeless outside, and you'd frequently get back to your car to find a bum going through your ashtray for change and such. Anyway, the biggest of the homeless guys was Daryl. For the price of one beer, Daryl would watch your car and even escort you back to make sure no one hassled you. Well, one time, a buddy feels bad for Daryl and throws him $5. That was it. The price of going for beer went from one Meisterbrow, $5 per 12-pack, to $5. Being that a 12-pack and a pack of smokes totaled $7.50, this was an unacceptable tax. A new, disreputable liquor store had to be located. I was walking to the garage through the main lobby of the hospital I work at, I'm a nurse, and saw a woman sprawled across the floor with her family around her. I ran over to help and asked, "Are you okay?" Good lord. This woman sits straight up and starts screaming.
Did she just ask if I'm okay? Did she just ask me if I'm okay?
And proceeds to throw punches at me. They all missed, even though I was in WTF mode. Apparently she just found out a family member passed away and had fallen to the ground from shock. I had 2 good friends who dated for a very long time and fought like miserable spouses. We all know that couple. So they finally break up and the dude has to move out. I didn't want to get involved in their messy breakup, so I declined him when he asked to stay with me. Fast forward a few days and he gets kicked out of his friend's house, who lives with his mum, and can't go home to his parents because of his new job. So I begrudgingly say yes because I know I would hope for the same generosity in that position. A few weeks go by with no drama, and then I have to go out of town for 2 weeks. I'm glad to have someone watch the apartment. My landlord calls me a few days later saying my shower leaked and flooded the downstairs apartment, causing over $2,000 in damage to both my apartment and the downstairs one. My friend denies the whole thing, will not admit he did anything wrong, and also refuses to help me pay for it. I got kicked out, never got my security, and had to pay an additional $1,000 because of a clause in the lease saying it was my responsibility to maintain all plumbing. I let another driver get in front of me in the fast lane when I could have sped up and blocked him. He sped up to about 80 miles per hour, and a half-mile down the road from me, he rear-ended a car that blew a tire and wrecked. I did not check the news to see if anyone had died, and never will. A lawyer friend of mine represented a guy pulled over for speeding or something, who was asked by the officer, "Do you have any firearms?" The man responds honestly, "Well, I have one locked up at home, but not on me." Turns out, since the time he legally purchased and registered his firearm, Congress had passed a law making it a federal felony for anyone ever convicted of domestic assault to own or possess a firearm. Problem is, even though the Commonwealth had a list of people convicted of domestic assault and a list of people with registered firearms, nobody let our guy know that when he answered this question a bit too honestly, he was confessing to a federal felony with a minimum sentence of 5 years in the pen. My laptop had just died when I found a MacBook Pro at a park with no one around to claim it. I hung around the laptop for half an hour and no one came forward. I tried to find the owner, but it was password protected and I didn't want to mess with it. My wife, being the ethical angel on my shoulder, convinced me to turn it in with the caveat that I could keep it if no one claimed it. I took it to the police station. Before I handed it over, I asked about their found property policy, and the desk person said, 90 days, and if it isn't claimed, it's yours. Sweet, I might get a free laptop without the guilt of stealing it from someone. So I went to my car and got the laptop and turned it in. The detective saw the laptop and said, "Oh, not computers. We destroy those after 90 days. Gosh darn it. Haha, well, I do understand the policy for the sake of protecting the data and info of the owners, but still a major bummer. I walked out of a bar and saw a man and woman assaulting a homeless man. The homeless guy was about 5'4" and about 110 pounds, and he was already down on his knees. The man and woman were both Samoan from their looks, so they were big. Very big. She was about 6'1" and about 220 pounds, and her male companion was really, really big, about 6'5" and over 300 pounds. I ran up to them and told them to stop, which was a really big mistake on my part. I should have just yelled police or something to get them to stop, but hindsight is 20/20. The woman came after me and her friend tried to flank me, which is super dangerous for me at this point. I'm 5'10" and 200 pounds and can handle myself, but this is quickly becoming something I cannot handle. I pulled my knife before she could get to me, and her friend could get behind me. Her big companion saw that I was not fricking around now, and that I will not go down without a serious fight. As a side note here to anyone who is assaulted, never go down in a street fight. You're defenseless and can easily be very, very hurt, crippled, or killed. Real life is not the movies, and people do not stop beating you because you're defenseless. On with the story. The big Samoan guy grabbed her and held her and said that I had a knife and to let me leave, and I do. I walk/jog the hell out of there, and I'm about a block away when I hear a loud yell. As I spin around, I see the woman running full speed at me, and I have just enough time to get my hands up and spin her into the street, and her boyfriend about 50 yards behind her at full run towards me also. She starts swinging at me hard, not like some dainty girl, but really trying to knock me out. Remember, she outweighs me by 20 pounds, and I have her huge guy friend now barreling down on me from behind. I decide to knock her out, and I unload everything I have into her jaw. She goes down instantly and is out cold. I turn to face her boyfriend, who is now about 10 yards away, and I see him just stop cold and look at her laying in the street. He just walks past me and picks up her head and looks at me. At this very moment, some guys who saw me basically just knock some girl out without any context yell something and start running toward me. They're about a block away. The big Samoan guy looks at me with a really sad expression like he's really sorry for everything and just says, "Run." And I do. I fricking run like someone is trying to kill me because those guys who saw me hit her are fricking coming to kick my butt, and there are a bunch of them. I run to my car and I get the heck out of there. I get away, and I have never told a single person about this incident until right now. I have never been so scared as I was that night. My best friend was going through a messy breakup with his girlfriend. She was teed off, so she stole a whole bunch of his clothes and his cat and drove off to her apartment. We jumped in my car and gave chase. She pulled into her apartment complex and parked before realizing we were behind her, so I pulled up behind her and blocked her car in. She started screaming at me to move my car, and I said, "Frick no," while my friend called the cops. He had had the cat for 8 years and was desperately attached to it. He had only had the girlfriend for 2 years. The cops get there and they talk to everyone. They figure out the situation, they tell the girlfriend to return the cat and the clothes. Then an officer comes over to me and says he's considering arresting me for false imprisonment. My freaking jaw dropped. Normally, I'm super respectful and cool with the cops, but it was just too much for me to swallow. Are you kidding me right now? Not at all. You put your car behind hers, making it impossible for her to leave. You kept her there against her will, and that's a crime. She could have gotten out of the car and walked away at any time. I was only stopping her from fleeing the scene with stolen property. Oh, are you a police officer now? Is that your job? I stare at him sullenly, a look of, "You can't be frickin' serious," on my face. I guess we don't do anything at this time, but next time you shouldn't get involved in disputes like this. It's a matter for the police, and you should leave it up to us. God, what a fricking mess that night was. I offered my seat to an elderly lady in the bus. Turns out she wasn't that old and felt offended, so she screamed at me. At which point you tell her to F off and say, "Fine, I guess you don't deserve any courtesy," and proceed to sit back down. Almost the same thing happened to me. Old lady didn't scream at me, but she said in a very catty tone, "Don't think you're doing anything special." But she did sit down in my place. I have fallen prey for this one before. Folks, you should still do it anyway. Just brush off the annoying prideful ones who scream at you for trying to be decent. Or, as another commenter puts it, kick her in the shins. Old ladies have weak bones. When I was young, I was able to save money very well. No bank or anything, just a wooden box under my bed that used to hold dominoes. Every week I would cash my paycheck, put the vast majority in the box, and keep a little pocket money for myself. When I was 18, I worked at a video store. Everyone who worked there were very good friends. One day, we were told by our boss, a really great guy named Drew, that he had come down with stomach cancer. I talked to him afterwards and was sad to hear that the store's terrible insurance was causing Drew to have to choose between treatments or paying his rent. Drew was gay and his family had disowned him, so he had no help. I thought about it for a few days and decided I would help him out. I agreed to loan him money so that he could pay his rent. He would pay me back when able and everything would be great. I gave him $3,000 I had saved since I was 12. A little over 3 actually, but who's counting, right? Cut to 5 months later, I come to work to see Drew being dragged out by police. Turns out he had a massive white powder problem and had been stealing from the store. He was such a good guy, I actually fought for him at work for a month or so until I saw the evidence. I also learned that he had never had cancer. It was a scam that he had used on several friends of his, so he and his boyfriend could get high. I've never been able to get back to where I was financially. I'm not sure what changed, maybe because I got a bank account, maybe emotionally it messed me up. I'm not sure. I have $60 to my name now. One thing is for sure, I have never trusted people the same since. Not sure anything will be able to give me that back. In the 7th grade, gave a choking girl the Heimlich maneuver, saved her life. No one else knew how, and was suspended for 5 days for sexual harassment. Her parents tried to sue, but it went nowhere. You've got to be kidding me. Weren't there any faculty present that saw it? Or was it the girl who claimed harassment? The security said I was rubbing myself on her or something. The girl was thankful, her parents were the really upset ones. The school blew it out of proportion. A work friend of mine was going through a nasty divorce. Even though it wasn't finalized, he was seeing another woman at work on the down low, but everyone at the office had suspicions. Having dealt with divorce before, I sent him an email explaining that people were talking and he may want to be more discreet so as to not exacerbate things with his divorce. He told the down low girl what I had said. She told me to mind my business. I explained over and over again that I meant well and it was nothing against her. She convinced him not to talk to me anymore and we haven't spoken since. My wife and I were flying from Montreal to Vienna 2 years ago. We were flying coach, so of course we're the last to board. I see a lady sleeping in the waiting room at the gate. Good Samaritan that I like to think I am, I gently wake her and ask if she's going to Vienna. She says that, yes, she is, so I tell her that it's final boarding. Away we go, and she gets on behind us. As we're taking our seats, she goes by us and we smell the alcohol vapors. Oh no. Anyway, we get our seatbelts on and they start pushing the plane out to the taxiway. The flight attendants go through the cabin, checking seatbelts. But when they get to the drunk lady, they can't wake her up. So, overcome all the flight attendants, shaking her, trying to wake her up. Finally, they start calling for a doctor on the flight. Someone speaks up and is a nurse. They try and fail. So, back the plane goes to the gate, on come the EMS and haul her out. 2 hours later, we're sitting at the gate while they try to find her luggage to pull off the flight. I sank deep into my seat and hoped like heck no one saw me wake her up to get on the flight. My friends in college had to kill and dissect mice. There were way too many etherized mice for the class, so they got the leftover little dude and carefully revived him, gave him water, stroked his fur, and took him outside and released him on the lawn outside the cafeteria. Free crumbs for life. He made it several yards before a bird swooped down and grabbed him. I saved a bird that was stuck in a fence. It was a wooden privacy fence, and the bird had managed to get its head stuck in between two boards on the fence. All I had to do was grab the bird and lift it up above the boards. Anyway, it pooped on me. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.